sucks. I can do what I want, bitch. Yeah, I have sex and I don't use protection. It's my hot body. I'll do what I want. I don't go to school and I kill people. Whatever. I'll do what I want.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Hope everyone is doing well. I had a pretty good day myself. We played a lot of Sea of Thieves with Belandris and Snafu. Had a really good day. So, hope all of you are doing the same. Let's go ahead and get into it. Say hi to everybody. We're going to finish up the Twitter drops, go through some breaking news, and then call it a night. So we're going to start on Rumble since they think I ignore them. If Dazzer1234, yeah, first. Indeed you are, sir. We have the lovely Impish. Good to see you. Hey, Tweety. Hey, Leanie. Oh, that was mine. What's up, Dazzer? You know, it'll probably help me with Neil if you report my gayness. Just saying. What's up, Fed? Other Richard, what's up, buddy? Just finished the lecture on what? You gave it or you were getting it? Yeah, and it was not Belandris' fault at all. He was telling me about his life story with video games. All his fault. Hey, what's up, Josh? I know it's been a dry day. That's why we played. That's why we played video games, because it's been shit all day for the most part. Hey, Jude. Well, you're failing. You're failing a great deal, Belandris. On the pretty part. You're just sitting there, but the pretty part. All right. So, like I said, gotcha. It's an interesting topic. I wish we could discuss it more, but you know, the powers that be won't let that happen. So, let's get right into it. Starting off where we ended the last stream. Perhaps the ultimate example of absolute fusion of state, corporate, and civil society organizations is the Stanford Internet Observatory, whose election integrity partnership is among the most voluminous flaggers in the Twitter files. So again, this is one of those, I don't know where this is. It says Queens, New York residents are receiving pre-filled out ballots for Joe Biden and being told to just send them back to the Board of Elections. This is blatantly illegal. Very true. Very, very true. But I wasn't under the assumption or under the understanding that they were written in so many different languages. after public uproar paused the Orwellian Disinformation Governance Board of the DHS in early 2020, Stanford created the EIP to fill the gaps. Legally, as director, Alex Stamos explains it here. Freedom Foundation Online.
There was a lack of capability around election disinformation. This is not because CISA didn't care about disinformation, but at the time, they lacked both kind of the funding and the legal authorizations to go do the kinds of work that would be necessary to truly understand how election disinformation was operating. So because of the feedback and the ideas from this group, we were able to pull together pretty quickly a project between these 4 different institutions to try to fill the gap of the things that the government could not do themselves.
The things that the government could not do themselves, because it might infringe on some rights. Hey, AP, what's up, buddy? I mentioned MSG. I always think of the Michael Snedeker group, the metal band. See, I always think of Madison Square Garden, but exactly. At least on the bright side, English is still first for now. EIP research manager Renee DiResta boasted that while filling the gaps, the EIP succeeded in getting tech partners Google, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter to take action on the 35% of URLs flagged under reduce, remove, or inform policies.
The Election Integrity Partnership ended data collection on November 19th, 2020. And during that time, the partnership processed 639 tickets on election-related mis and disinformation, of which 72% were related to delegitimizing the election results. Tech platform partners Twitter, Google, Facebook, and TikTok responded directly to 75% or more of the tickets in which they were tagged, a testament to both the high quality of reporting and the value of constructive relationships with the platforms. And although EIP did not make specific enforcement recommendations, because those are the platforms to determine in accordance with its policies, 35% of the URLs flagged were actioned under remove, reduce, or inform policies, again, helping contextualize for the public the content that they were seeing.
I don't need to be contextualized in the content that I'm seeing. I can figure that out myself. Hey, what's up, Charlemagne? According to the EIP's own data, it succeeded in getting nearly 22 million tweets labeled in the run-up to the 2020 vote. That's a lot of tweets. It's crucial to reiterate, EIP was partnered with state entities like CISA and GEC while seeking elimination of millions of tweets in the Twitter files. Twitter execs did not distinguish between organizations using phrases like according to CISA or escalated by EIP. It's very long and legal heavy video, but essentially claims that PA election workers opened their inner envelopes on ballots before Election Day and called people to correct their ballots prior to Election Day, according to CIS. This video misrepresents PA law, the PA Supreme Court decision, and affidavits shown in the video. Thoughts on how to handle this one? What's up, Glitter? Listen, buddy, if you think how you want to and not how we tell you to, we're going to convince you to kill your neighbor and then yourself for the global good. I mean, that makes sense. I think they just make you hate your neighbor and then hope that you do the rest, personally. After the 2020 election, when EIP was renamed the Virality Project, the Stanford lab was onboarded to Twitter's JIRA ticketing system, absorbing this government proxy into Twitter infrastructure with the capability of taking an incredible 50 million tweets a day. 50 million a day. $50 million a day. That is insane amounts of censorship. Hello, Twitter team. We are excited to have you as an external partner for the Virality Project. The Virality Project's partner onboarding manual can be found here. This document includes all the onboarding and usage instructions for VP Jira Surface. Brian and Joe, please finish signing up for your Jira account using the link in the email you should have received from Jira at viralityproject.blah blah blah, or by visiting this online portal. Please let me know if you have any troubles with this. Hey, Barb. So this is I'm onboarding for this project. There needs to be a full on COVID. That will probably be a Rumble thing, but that's one that's coming up in the pipeline. So for sure. In one remarkable email, the Virality Project recommends that multiple platforms take action even against stories of true vaccine side effects and true posts, which could fuel hesitancy. None of the leaders in this effort to police COVID speech and had health expertise. Of course they didn't. True stories, true vaccine side effects, true posts, which could fuel hesitancy. So they wanted you taking it no matter what. What's up, X-Comer? This is censorship industrial complex at its essence, a bureaucracy willing to sacrifice factual truths in service of broader narrative objectives. It's the opposite of what a free press does. Profiles portray Teresta as a warrior against Russian bots and misinformation, but reporters never inquire about the work with DARPA, GEC, and other agencies. In the video below from Mike Ben Cyber, Stamos introduces her as having worked for the CIA.
You joining us as our research manager, Renee? You can wave. Renee, yeah, let's give her a hand. Yes. You may know Renee from such reports as the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence's report on Russian interference. Renee has done a lot of writing and analytics. She has a computer science background like me. She is part of the academic unwashed with a computer science degree from a public university, but has gone out and worked for the CIA, has worked for a variety of companies, is currently a fellow with Mozilla, and will be joining us to manage a team of researchers doing this kind of work. But has gone out and worked for the CIA,
So that's all you need to know. Teresta has become the public face of the censorship industrial complex, a name promoted everywhere as an unquestioned authority on truth, fact, and internet hygiene, even though her former firm, New Knowledge, has been embroiled in 2 major disinformation scandals. So I get what they're saying. I get what they're saying with the disinformation, but I just hate that word. Like, it doesn't... Whatever. Odar Hamlin is trending. Maybe there's some health update. Oh, it's paid checks. Tweeting about how he's actually dead and there's a body double in his family is in on it. There are kinds of rumors that can get pretty bad for the targets, but community notes will no doubt clarify things. Damar Hamlin is the Buffalo Bills football player that collapsed on the field. Yep. What would you sacrifice for the truth? Maria Ressa discusses disinformation and social platforms with Prince Harry. She just looks like a lefty. Here's how Russia will attack the 2020 election. We're still not ready. So glad that one, they put Roger Stone up. So glad also that they stopped him and it was the most safe, secure election ever. This is ultimately the most serious problem with censorship industrial complex, Packard as a bulwark against lies and falsehood. It's on itself often a major source of disinformation, with American taxpayers funding their own estrangement from reality. I would happily take Roger Stone any day. I think he I'd talk to the man. DiResta's new knowledge helped design the Hamilton 68 project exposed in the Twitter files. Although it's claimed to track Russian influence, Hamilton rarely followed Americans like Ultra Maga Dog Mom, Right Celebrity, and even a British rugby player named Rod Bishop. Seems dangerous. Well, and that's the thing. And Richard, the biggest thing is we have to be able to have the discussion. And for especially with science, if you're saying that there's not a single scientific topic that is settled, like we can disagree and both be right on so many things, or it's Jesus Christ. We need to have open dialogue and discussion. Hell, you might learn something. Wouldn't that be nice? If people could actually learn something. But we won't do that because it's threatening. That was taken out of context. No, I think you're totally fine, Richard. I apologize if I misunderstood it. Yeah. And corruption, MSM lies, and UN and bankers. But those are all very dangerous accounts. Told he was put on the Hamilton list of suspected Russian influence accounts. Bishop was puzzled. Nonsense, I'm supporting Ukraine, he said. Well, that's your first mistake, because they will turn and eat their own. Always eat their own. As a result of Hamilton's efforts, all sorts of people were falsely tied in press stories to Russian bots. Former House Intel chief Devin Nunes, walkaway founder Brandon Straka, supporters of the Fire McMaster hashtag, even people who use the term deep state. And the most fucked up thing is they can say that Russia isn't as big of an influence and is in the same breath, and expect you to believe both of them. So, well, and that's the exact same thing. I mean, so I'll get right back to you, Desert. Barb, I want mine up so bad. I'm hopeful that it will pop up at some point. They don't want us to learn. They want us to be on mushrooms and kept in the dark and fed on shit. Yeah, and I'm not at all anti-marijuana. So don't get it twisted. I think you do what you want. But I think that was part of the push, because if they can subdue and find a new way to make people subservient, then I think they would be more than happy to use that. And that's unfortunate. Yeah, and most of these are real people. They're not bots. Hamilton 68 was funded by the Alliance for Securing Democracy, which in turn was funded by the German Marshall Fund, which in turn was funded by the Department of State. Cute, 2.9 million. The far worse scandal was Project Birmingham, in which thousands of fake Russian Twitter accounts were created to follow Alabama Republican Roy Moore in his 2017 race for the U.S. Senate. Newspapers reported Russia seemed to take an interest in this race, favoring Moore. Wow. So at least one reporter from a major American paper was at a meeting in September 2018 when new knowledge planned bizarre bot and smear campaign. That story didn't break until December, 2 days after Durista gave a report on Russian interference to the Senate. Yeah, absolutely. It's just it's them doing exactly what they say. They say, oh, the Republicans are creating a what the Magda thing is. I don't know what the Magda thing is. Hang on. I didn't see her. Magda. I didn't see where that came up. What the fuck is Magda? Sorry, I'm trying to go back because I don't see. I truly don't know what Magda is. Magda, I don't know what Magda is, honestly. If anybody in chat knows, let me know. Because I missed that and I apologize. Right. Well, MAGA is Make America Great Again, but I'm confused. She wrote Magda, and I don't know what Magda is. So I tried to look for it, but I don't know where that went. And not been this year, but what? I am missing something seriously. I'm gonna keep going because I don't know what the hell's going on. though at least one reporter from a major American paper was at a meeting September 2018 when New Knowledge planned the bizarre bot and smear campaign. The story didn't break until December, 2 days after I read that one already. Internally, Twitter collectively assessed the Moore story as far back as fall of 2017, saying it had no way of knowing if the Moore campaign purchased bots or if an adversary purchased them in an attempt to discredit them. I'll direct message you later, Glitter. We have no way of concluding that Moore Senate or someone from the team purchased these followers, or if an adversary purchased them and had them follow Moore Senate in an attempt to discredit them. Well, no shit. Twitter told this to reporters who asked about the story contemporaneously. Moreover, after the story broke, Twitter's Yoel Otterboy Roth wrote, there have been other instances in which domestic actors created fake accounts. Some are fairly prominent in progressive circles. That's the same thing they just said. Otterboy added, we shouldn't comment repeatedly in the Twitter files. When Twitter learned that truth about scandals like Project Birmingham, they said nothing, like banks that were silent about mortgage fraud. Reporters also kept quiet, protecting fellow stakeholders. Twitter stayed silent out of political caution. DeResta, who ludicrously claimed she thought Project Birmingham was just an experiment to investigate to what extent they could grow audiences under sensational news, hinted at a broader reason. Sounds good, Linda. Good to see you. Who knows some of the people involved in this project, claims that the main intent was to test tactics. My understanding was that they were going to investigate to what extent they could grow audiences for Facebook pages using sensational news. And we know several times they've got caught manipulating different kind of experiments against Facebook users without their knowledge or consent. So I know that there were people who believed the Democrats needed to fight fire with fire, she told the New York Times. It was absolutely chatter going around the party. I know there were people who believed the Democrats need to fight fire with fire, Ms. DeResta said, adding that she disagreed. It was absolutely chatter going around the party. Almost done. The incident underscored the extreme danger of censorship industrial complex. Without real oversight mechanisms, there's nothing to prevent these empowered information vanguards from bending the truth for their own ends. You should treat yourself and take a lifetime meta vacation. By way of proof, no major press organization has re-examined the bold claims DeResta New Knowledge made to the Senate. Example that Russian ads reached 126 million people in 2016 while covering up the Hamilton and Alabama frauds. If the CIC deems it, lies stay hidden. In the digital age, the sprawling new information control bureaucracy is an eerie sequel to the dangers Dwight Eisenhower warned about in his farewell address when he said, "The potential for disastrous rise of misplaced power exists."
A vital element in keeping the peace is our military establishment. Our arms must be mighty, ready for instant action, so that no potential aggressor may be tempted to risk his own destruction. Our military organization today bears little relation to that known of any of my predecessors in peacetime, or indeed by the fighting men of World War II or Korea. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. We annually spend on military security alone more than the net income of all United States corporations. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
And that's former President Eisenhower with his military-industrial complex, which has undoubtedly taken over. And the normal thanks to Schellenberger, Dr. Not a Doctor, and Reporters Researchers, Technofog, NFX Burger Bell, Schmitzu, TW6384, and others for help in preparing this testimony. Twitter file searches are performed by a third party, so material may have been left out. So, there's that portion of it. I can find one and I'll post it. I'll throw it in Discord. So I want to watch a little bit of this. We're not going to watch the whole thing because it's like 3 hours long. But we'll watch maybe like Jim Jordan. Maybe. Maybe. Let's try and refresh it.
We welcome everyone to the second hearing of the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. The chair now recognizes himself for an opening statement. In the run-up to the 2020 presidential election, FBI Special Agent Elvis Chan, in his deposition in Missouri versus Biden, said that he repeatedly informed Twitter and other social media platforms of the likelihood of a hack and leak operation in the run-up to that presidential election. He did it even though there was no evidence. In fact, he said in his deposition that we hadn't seen anything, no intrusions, no hack, yet he repeatedly told him something was coming. Yoel Roth, head of trust and safety at Twitter, testified that he had had regular meetings with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and other folks regarding election security. During these weekly meetings, federal law enforcement agencies communicated that they expected a hack and leak operation. The expectations of a hack and leak operation were discussed throughout 2020, and he was told they would occur in a period shortly before the 2020 presidential election, likely in October. And finally, he said, I also learned in these meetings that there were rumors that a hack and leak operation would involve Hunter Biden. So, what did the government tell him? A hack and leak operation was coming. How often did the government tell him this? Repeatedly for a year. When did the government say it was going to happen? October of 2020. And who did the government say it would involve? Hunter Biden. Now think about it. Government had no evidence of any intrusions, no evidence of a hack and leak, yet for a year they tell Twitter that a hack and leak is coming, it's coming in October, and it will involve Hunter Biden. No evidence, but the FBI knows what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and who it's going to involve. Now that's amazing. That is amazing to me. Maybe they get the time right. We're kind of used to October surprises every 4 years. So maybe they get the time right, but they got the time, they got the method, and they got the person. That's amazing. It's almost like these guys were clairvoyant. How did they know? How did they know? Maybe it's because they had the laptop and they had had it for a year. They had the laptop. They knew it wasn't hacked, but that's not what they told Twitter. They didn't tell Twitter that information, and Twitter believed, frankly, everything they said. In those weekly meetings, the FBI had built a cozy relationship with this tech company and others as well, we believe. Emails between the FBI and Twitter began with the greeting, "Hey, Twitter folks." Emails that asked Twitter to take down accounts and limit visibility of tweets. The FBI handed out security clearance to folks at Twitter. They communicated with Twitter on the secret teleporter app where messages disappear after a certain length of time. And of course, they paid Twitter $3.4 million. In addition, on August 6, 2020, the FBI briefed Senators Grassley and Johnson, and according to the senator's testimony last month in front of this committee, the briefing was bogus and done so someone could go leak that the briefing had happened and undermine the senator's investigation. In September of 2020, a government-funded think tank gets involved. They do a tabletop exercise. The participants include the New York Times, the Washington Post, and other mainstream media outlets. Facebook is there. Mr. Roth of Twitter is there. The organizer was the former CEO of NPR and the former head of news at Twitter. The mock exercise is hosted by the Aspen Institute. The Aspen Institute, which, by the way, in 2020, their budget was $9.3 million. $5 million from the State Department, $4 million from USAID. Almost all their budget. Guess the title.
Wow.
Guess the title of this exercise. The Aspen Digital Hack and Dump Working Group. And guess who the subject was? Guess who the subject was? Hunter Biden. That's amazing. October 14, 2020, the New York Post runs the story on the Biden laptop and Twitter takes it down, even though it was accurate and even though it didn't violate Twitter's rules. Other social media companies do the same. Mainstream press works to downplay and discredit the story. Finally, as if on cue, 5 days later on October 19th, 51 former Intel officials sign a letter with the now famous sentence, "The Biden laptop story has all the classic earmarks of a Russian information operation." Something that was absolutely false. Our government built a cozy relationship with big tech. They primed him for a hack and leak operation. They funded the think tank, which further primed big tech and big media. They leaked information to undermine the good work of 2 United States senators. And then 51 former intel officials closed the deal with their letter. Mr. Schellenberger pointed out his reporting, the information op was run on us, run on we the people. And if that's not the weaponization of government, I don't know what is. I'll get to this in a second, but I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. I'll get to this after we allow the ranking member her opening statement. I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement.
Thank you. Before my opening statement, Mr. Chairman, as a point of order, it's been my understanding that one of the witnesses has, within the last half an hour, released additional information that the Republicans may and you.
Oh, shut the hell up. Nobody wants to listen to your bullshit. I'll let Jordan finish up, and then we'll. This was actually decent, but like I said,
the
it's
chairman claimed that big government and big tech colluded to shape and mold the narrative and suppress information and censor.
Democrats. The idea that 2 journalists who
Did
happen
you
to be
not give
Democrats,
that offer at 8 o'clock last
I'm
night?
talking now. Your time was ended.
Neither of us are in time.
I don't think they're here to help us politically. I think they're here to tell us the truth. And oh, by the way, the first FTC letter to Twitter, after the first set of Twitter files, the very first question was, who are the journalists you're talking to? And you guys don't care. You don't care. You
Is it later?
You don't want the American people to see. You don't want the American people to see what happened.
What's
the
up,
full
Alex?
video, transparency. You don't want that, and you don't want 2 journalists who have been named personally by the Biden administration, FTC, in a letter.
The Biden administration.
And you're saying they're here to help us. They're here to tell their story. And frankly, I think they're brave individuals for being willing to come after they've been named in a letter from the Biden FTC.
Is this your question time now?
No, I'm responding to your ridiculous statements you made in your opening statement.
Okay, well, let's get on with it.
Oh, now we want to get on with it. So you can say all the things you want. And
I did in my opening statement, as well as you had an opening statement. You said what you needed to say in your opening statement, and I, as the ranking member, have used my
objection,
time.
all other opening statements will be included in the record. We will introduce today's witness, Matt Taibbi, the journalist and author. He's one of the authors of the Twitter files, previously worked for Rolling Stone, that right-wing publication, Rolling Stone, where so many Republicans work at. He's also written several books about American politics and culture. And of course, as I pointed out, yesterday on the front page, was named by the FTC. Michael Schellenberger is also a journalist, author, and one of the authors of the Twitter files. He's also co-founded several nonprofits, including Breakthrough Institute, Environmental Progress, and the California Peace Coalition, another right-wing Republican organization, I'm sure. His work often focuses on crime and drug policy, homelessness, and the climate. We welcome our witnesses and thank them for appearing today. We will begin by swearing you in. Would you please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is true and correct to the best of your knowledge, information, and belief, so help you God? Let the record show both witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and be seated, please. We will now start with Mr. Taibbi. You guys, I think, understand do you want to go with Mr. Schellenberger? We can go with Mr. Schellenberger. We'll start with Mr. Schellenberger. You understand how it works. You get 5 minutes. Make sure you hit the microphone so we can all hear. When it gets to yellow, it means just like you would expect time to start winding up. And when it gets to red, it's time to stop. But we'll be a little bit lenient on the time. Mr. Schellenberger, you are recognized for your opening statement.
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, members of the committee, thank you very much for inviting my testimony. In his 1961 farewell address, President Dwight Eisenhower warned of, quote, the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower feared that the size and power of the complex or cluster of government contractors in the Defense Department would, quote, endanger our liberties or democratic processes. How did he mean that? Through, quote, domination of the nation's scholars by federal employment, project allocations, and the power of money. He feared public policy would become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. Eisenhower's fears were well-founded. Today, American taxpayers are unwittingly financing the growth and power of a censorship industrial complex run by America's scientific and technological elite, which endangers our liberties and democracy. I'm grateful for this opportunity to offer this testimony and sound the alarm over the shocking and disturbing emergence of state-sponsored censorship in the United States of America. The Twitter files, state attorneys general lawsuits, and investigative reporters have revealed a large and growing network of government agencies, academic institutions, and non-governmental organizations that are actively censoring American citizens, often without their knowledge, on a range of issues. I do not know how much of the censorship is coordinated beyond what we have been able to document, and I will not speculate. I recognize that the law allows Facebook, Twitter, and other private companies to moderate content on their platforms, and I support the right of governments to communicate with the public, including to dispute inaccurate information. But government officials have been caught repeatedly pushing social media platforms to censor disfavored users and content. Often these acts of censorship threaten the legal protection social media companies need to exist, Section 230. If government officials are directing or facilitating such censorship, notes one law professor, it raises serious First Amendment questions. It is axiomatic that the government cannot do indirectly what it is prohibited from doing directly. Moreover, we know that the US government has funded organizations that pressure advertisers to boycott news media organizations and social media platforms that refuse to censor and/or spread disinformation, including alleged conspiracy theories. The Stanford Internet Observatory, the University of Washington, the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab, and Graphica have all inadequately disclosed ties to the Department of Defense, the CIA, and other intelligence agencies. They work with multiple US government agencies to institutionalize censorship research and advocacy within dozens of other universities and think tanks. It is important to understand how these groups function. They are not publicly engaging with their opponents in an open exchange of ideas. They aren't asking for a national debate over the limits of the First Amendment. Rather, they are creating blacklists of disfavored people and then pressuring, cajoling, and demanding that social media platforms censor, de-amplify, and even ban the people on those lists. The censorship industrial complex combines established methods of psychological manipulation, some developed by the US military during the global war on terror, with highly sophisticated tools from computer science, including artificial intelligence. The complex's leaders are driven by the fear that the internet and social media platforms empower populist, alternative, and fringe personalities and views which they regard as destabilizing. Federal government officials, agencies, and contractors have gone from fighting ISIS recruiters and Russian bots to censoring and deplatforming ordinary Americans and disfavored public figures. Importantly, the bar for bringing in military-grade government monitoring and speech countering techniques has moved from, quote, countering terrorism to, quote,
Barb, by the way,
countering
I
extremism
got that
to countering
thing
simple
for you,
misinformation,
and I put it in
otherwise
live
known
chat,
as
and I
being
also
wrong on the internet.
DM'd it to you.
The government no longer needs a predicate of calling you a terrorist or an extremist to deploy government resources to counter your political activity. The only predicate it needs is simply the assertion that the opinion you expressed on social media is wrong. These efforts extend to influencing and even directing conventional news media organizations. Since 1971, when the Washington Post and New York Times elected to publish classified Pentagon papers about the war in Vietnam, journalists have understood that we have a professional obligation to report on leaked documents whose contents are in the public interest. And yet in 2020, the Aspen Institute and Stanford Cyber Policy Center urged journalists to, quote,
we can
break the
certainly
Pentagon's
keep
papers
watching it.
principle
I don't have
and
a
not
problem with
cover
that.
leaked information to prevent the
If you
spread
guys would
of
prefer that,
disinformation.
it's just long.
Government-funded censors frequently invoke the prevention of real-world harm to justify their demands for censorship, but the censors define harm far more expansively than the Supreme Court does. Increasingly, the censors say their goal is to restrict information that delegitimizes governmental, industrial, and news media organizations. That mandate is so sweeping that it could easily censor criticism from any part of the status quo, from elected officials to institutions to laws. Congress should immediately cut off funding to the censors and investigate their activities. It should mandate instant reporting of all conversations between social media executives, government employees, and government contractors concerning content moderation. And finally, Congress should limit the broad permission given to social media platforms to censor, deplatform, and spread propaganda. Thank you very much.
I thank the gentleman for his opening statement. Mr. Taibbi, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman.
Mr. Taibbi, hit that
Chairman Jordan, Ranking Member Plaskett, members of the Select Committee, thank you for having me today. My name is Matt Taibbi. I've been a reporter for 30 years and a staunch advocate of the First Amendment. Much of that time was spent at Rolling Stone magazine. Ranking Member Plaskett, I'm not a so-called journalist. I've won the National Magazine Award, the I.F. Stone Award for Independent Journalism, and I've written 10 books, including 4 New York Times bestsellers. I'm now the editor of the online magazine Racket on the independent platform Substack. I'm here today because of a series of events that began late last year when I received a note from a source online. It read, "Are you interested in doing a deep dive into what censorship and manipulation was going on at Twitter?" A week later, the first of what became known as the Twitter Files reports came out. To say these attracted intense public interest would be an understatement. My computer looked like a Vegas slot machine as just the first tweet about the blockage of the Hunter Biden laptop story registered 143 million impressions and 30 million engagements. But it wasn't until a week after the first report, after Michael Schellenberger, Barry Weiss, and other researchers joined the search of the files, that we started to grasp the significance of this story. The original promise of the internet was that it might democratize the exchange of information globally. A free internet would overwhelm all attempts to control information flow, its very existence a threat to anti-democratic forms of government everywhere. What we found in the files was a sweeping effort to reverse that promise and use machine learning and other tools to turn the internet into an instrument of censorship and social control. Unfortunately, our own government appears to be playing a lead role. We saw the first hints in communications between Twitter executives before the 2020 election, when we read things like "flagged by DHS" or "please see attached report from FBI for potential misinformation." This would be attached to an Excel spreadsheet with a long list of names whose accounts were often suspended shortly after. Again, Ranking Member Plaskett, I would note that the evidence of Twitter government relationship includes lists of tens of thousands of names on both the left and right. The people affected include Trump supporters, but also left-leaning sites like Consortium and Truthout, the leftist South American channel Telesur, the Yellow Vest movement. That, in fact, is a key point of the Twitter files, that it's neither a left nor right issue. Following the trail of communications between Twitter and the federal government across tens of thousands of emails led to a series of revelations. Mr. Chairman, we summarized and submitted them to the committee in the form of a new Twitter Files thread, which was also released to the public this morning. We learned Twitter, Facebook, Google, and other companies developed a formal system for taking in moderation requests from every corner of government, from the FBI, the DHS, the HHS, DOD, the Global Engagement Center at State, even the CIA. For every government agency scanning Twitter, there were perhaps 20 quasi-private entities doing the same thing, including Stanford's Election Integrity Partnership, NewsGuard, the Global Disinformation Index, and many others, many taxpayer-funded. A focus of this fast-growing network, as Mike noted, is making lists of people whose opinions, beliefs, associations, or sympathies are deemed misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation. That last term is just a euphemism for true but inconvenient. Undeniably, the making of such lists is a form of digital McCarthyism. Ordinary Americans are not just being reported to Twitter for de-amplification or deplatforming, but to firms like PayPal, digital advertisers like Xandr, and crowdfunding sites like GoFundMe. These companies can and do refuse service to law-abiding people and businesses whose only crime is falling afoul of a distant, faceless, unaccountable, algorithmic judge. As someone who grew up a traditional ACLU liberal,
Hey, Stevie, what's up, buddy?
This mechanism for punishment and deprivation without due process is horrifying. Another troubling aspect is the role of the press, which should be the people's last line of defense in such cases. But instead of investigating these groups, journalists partnered with them. If Twitter declined to remove an account right away, government agencies and NGOs would call reporters for the New York Times, Washington Post, and other outlets, who in turn would call Twitter demanding to know why action had not yet been taken. Effectively, news media became an arm of a state-sponsored thought policing system. I'm running out of time, so I'll just sum up and say, It's just not possible to instantly arrive at truth. It is, however, possible, becoming technologically possible to instantly define and enforce a political consensus online, which I believe is what we're looking at. This is a grave threat to people of all political persuasions. The First Amendment and an American population accustomed to the right to speak is the best defense left against the censorship industrial complex. If the latter can knock over our first and most important constitutional guarantee, these groups will have no serious opponent left anywhere. If there's anything the Twitter files show, it's that we're in danger of losing this most precious right, without which all democratic rights are impossible. Thank you for the opportunity to appear, and I'd be happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Taibbi. We appreciate both of your opening statements. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, it's so hard. It's so hard
Gentlemen,
to get
thank
in
you both
under
for
5
being here. It
minutes
is
or
not
3 or
surprising
whatever.
that the minority is already attacking you in its opening statement. We apologize to both of you. You shouldn't be treated that way. Some of the defenders of big tech and the Biden administration, as we know, have worked very hard to cast doubts on the legitimacy of your reporting, and some have gone so far to state it's irrelevant if Twitter was suppressing speech in coordination with the federal government. But this morning, we saw a stunning display of their attack of your character. We shouldn't be surprised. This is what the defenders of big government corruption do. This is the playbook. They destroy the messenger. We just saw it here on live television, and everybody can see it for themselves.
X-Comer with a Rumble rant, $10 Rumble rant, and I think it's Morse code, but I don't speak Morse code, buddy. Is that or it's emojis, and emojis don't come up on Rumble rants. But either way, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
And the whistleblowers, of course, as well. Look, this is what we know. What you've documented carefully in the Twitter files are a couple of key facts. People will hear a lot of things today, but this is what they need to know. The federal government, from Democrat members of Congress to intelligence agencies, including the FBI, used Twitter and other social media companies to censor Americans' speech. If the alarm bells are not going off, then you're not paying attention. Over the past 3 years, documents show, they prove what you guys have uncovered here. There's communication between Twitter and the FBI. It was constant, it was pervasive. Twitter was basically an FBI subsidiary before Elon Musk took it over. The Twitter files revealed that by 2020, Twitter was engaged in open information sharing with the intelligence community, and now we know there were many intelligence agencies apparently involved in this. The FBI pressured Twitter to act on election-related tweets leading up to the 2022 election. Of course, they did it in 2020 as well. And Twitter dutifully censored content as a result. Twitter executives restricted accounts. They censored speech that conflicted with the left's narrative. Twitter has used its internal tools to control and manipulate speech considered misinformation. And who was determining that? It was the government bureaucrats. Documents show that Twitter used visibility filtering to restrict certain accounts and posts and removed people from the platform altogether. The Twitter files should be a matter of bipartisan concern for every member of Congress and every American citizen, because it is a bedrock
Democratic leader
of our constitutional system that the government does not get to decide what speech is acceptable or true. Under the First Amendment, Americans have a right to speak freely, regardless of whether their speech upsets the preferred narrative. In fact,
Ozzy, as always, you are more than welcome.
Everybody on the left used to believe in that, or at least they purported to. Government and media fact checkers frequently get things wrong. The American people can't and shouldn't rely on so-called experts to be the arbiters of truth, disinformation boards, and the like. It doesn't matter what political party you're in. Government should not suppress important debates in public discourse. Gentlemen, let me start with Mr. Taibbi. You have a long award-winning journalist career. You just highlighted here decades of experience reporting on some of the most complex and important issues of our time. Where do you rate your reporting on the Twitter files among your whole body of work throughout your career? How serious is this?
Well, first of all, Mr. Congressman, thank you for the question. I would say, you know, I spent 10 years covering the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis. That was obviously a very serious issue, but this Twitter file story and what we're looking at now and what we're investigating now, I don't think there's any comparison. This is by far the most serious thing that I've ever looked at.
I'll have to look at that.
It's certainly the most grave story that I've ever worked on personally.
I want to ask you both the same question, and that is, first of all, has anyone from the federal government contacted you during the course of this investigation or since you've reported on the Twitter files? And number two, Who do you think are the most egregious federal government agencies involved in this censorship exercise? Let me start with Mr. Schellenberg.
Thank you, Congressman. I have not been contacted. Thank you, Congressman. I have not been contacted by anybody in the Biden administration related to this topic. And I would like to echo what Matt just said. I've never worked on an issue where so frequently while doing it, I just had chills go up my spine because of what I was seeing happening. I never thought in my own country that freedom of speech would be threatened in this way. And it's just frightening.
Neither did many of us.
The most recent, our most recent discoveries, I mean, I think you understand the process, is that we first raised a bunch of concerns around the way Twitter pre-Elon Musk was censoring people and creating blacklists. Very quickly, we discovered that we had FBI agents basically and other government officials, demanding that Twitter take certain actions. We now know that the Department of Homeland Services, which has had, what's that? Security. Sorry, Department of Homeland Security, had to try to create a disinformation board. That went away after public backlash, but we now realize that they have this other enterprise, and they've been building out basically mechanisms to proliferate a censorship industrial complex around the country to censor on a whole range of issues. And so you've seen this censorship industry go from, well, we're just fighting ISIS to, well, we're just fighting Russian disinformation bots.
Hold up. We got a translation through a rumble rant from the Apostle Steve. Translation. My name is Xcomer ZZZ, and I'm gay. Thank God. Thank God we got a translation. Thanks, Stevie, for the rumble rant.
Well, now we need to fight domestic misinformation, which is just saying we need to fight against people who are saying things we disagree with online. That's all that means. And I mean, it's not a slippery slope. It's an immediate leap into a terrifying mechanism that we only see in totalitarian societies of attempting to gain control over what the social media platforms are allowing. And so, for me, it starts at DHS, but we basically see almost every government agency involved in this.
It's frightening. I'm out of time. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do need to correct the record. So there's been the suggestion here that the FBI and other government agencies pressured employees at Twitter to
we are lazy dog is the actual translation.
When we had Mr. Roth, who was the old Roth, who's the former global head of trust
I still don't get it,
at Twitter. So we
I
asked
appreciate
Twitter if there was pressure applied, and Mr. Roth said, "No, I would not agree with that. The FBI," this is his quote, "the FBI was quite careful and quite consistent,
of course,
to request review of the accounts, but not to cross the line into advocating for Twitter to take any particular action." So that's what Twitter said about the actions of the FBI vis-a-vis Twitter. Mr. Taibbi, in 2019, Special Counsel Robert Mueller unequivocally found that the Internet Research Agency, owned by Yevgeny Prigozhin, the same oligarch who runs the Wagner Group, carried out an extensive
all of it won a majority, so
disinformation
we'll sit and
to help
I'll talk
then
to you through it,
candidate
guys.
Donald Trump and to hurt Hillary Clinton. He also found that the Russian intelligence interfered with the 2016 election via a hack and release campaign, damaging to the Clinton campaign. These particular findings came on the heels of the unanimous assessment on the part of the United States 18 intelligence agencies that Russian President Putin, quote, ordered an influence campaign in 2016 aimed at the presidential election, close quote. They also followed
Wagner Group is based
of a bipartisan Senate Intelligence Committee report finding that Russia and Vladimir Putin engaged in, I quote, aggressive, multifaceted effort to influence the U.S. president election. So, Mr. Taibbi, do you believe that the Russians and their oligarch-controlled internet research agency interfered in the 2016 election?
Yep.
Via this social media disinformation campaign? Do you believe that?
Mr. Congressman, my disagreement with the issue is...
I think this is basically a yes or no question. Either you think so or you don't, and I don't
I
have
hate
a lot
that
of
shit.
time. So
Let him answer the question.
Okay,
You
well then I'm going to
chicken
answer
shit piece of shit.
not in the sense that that you're putting it.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
all countries
All right.
engage in offensive information operations. The question is scale.
Absolutely.
Do you believe that
the
Russia
Twitter files
engaged in a hacking, reclaiming my time? This is how it works now. I'll ask the questions and you try to provide an answer if you can.
You have to allow him to answer,
Do you
sir.
believe?
The gentleman is out of order and should not be interrupting a member asking a question on our side, Mr. Chairman.
Reclaiming my time from everyone. Do you believe that Russia engaged in a hack and release campaign damaging to the Clinton campaign back in 2016? Again,
I don't know, and I would say it's
Okay.
irrelevant.
All right, let me ask Mr. Schellenbeck. These are pretty easy questions. That's just whether you believe it or not.
Yep. It's always either Russia or
Mr.
Trump
Schellenbeck,
or
same
Russia
question.
and Trump.
Do you believe that the Russian oligarch-controlled internet research agency interfered in the 2016 election?
I think that they tried to.
Small man-made penis.
Fair enough. Mr. Schellenbeck, do you believe that the Russians engaged in a hack and release campaign with respect to the damaging information they released regarding the Clinton campaign?
To the best of my awareness, that is what happened.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
That's not the same thing.
The reason
influencing.
I understand.
Also, that material was true.
Look, let me introduce a couple of documents just to reinforce that we've got.
That is not a legitimate predicate
Unanimous-
for censorship.
Unanimous reclaiming my time.
Sure.
Gentleman's out of order. So, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask unanimous consent to enter the indictment in the United States versus the Internet Research Agency, U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, number 1-18-32. And also ask to enter into the record the executive summary to volume 1 of the Mueller report, which states, in March 2016, the GRU began hacking, this is the Russian agency, began hacking the email accounts of the Clinton campaign, volunteers and employees, including campaign chairman John Podesta. The GRU later released additional materials through the organization WikiLeaks. The presidential campaign of Donald Trump showed interest in WikiLeaks releases of the documents and welcomed their potential damage to candidate Clinton. So I've introduced these documents.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've introduced these documents because it's clear to me that Russia's use of social media to interfere in the 2016 election created abundant reason
Okay, I think
for social media platforms to be concerned.
Gentleman's time has expired. Without objection, these documents are entered into the record. We now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Issa, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to continue along, in a sense, the line we've been on just now. Mr. Taibbi, Mr. Schellenberger, I'll ask both of you. Is it fair to say Russia is a bad actor who is trying
surprised they got to it that early.
and to undermine confidence in the United States
Yeah, I
government
saw it.
and in our form
I
of
looked that up.
democracy?
So
I think that's a fair statement.
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the organization in Europe, the Global Engagement Center?
Yes.
Well, it's an American
State Department, I'm sorry, but are you familiar with the Global Engagement Center's use of European and other sources to in fact determine where Twitter files should or shouldn't be, if you will, taken down thousands of names and Twitter files, correct?
I'm not sure that Global Engagement Center is taking down Twitter files. I actually wasn't aware of that. I'm sorry.
Well, Twitter and the FBI have used this organization and their funding. Well, let me go on to another stay on the path I was on. You commented that the scale mattered. Okay, would you elaborate on scale mattering in the attempt to undermine free speech?
Absolutely. If I could take this. Yeah, so a great example of this is a report that the Global Engagement Center sent to Twitter and to members of the media and other platforms about what they called the pillars of Russian disinformation. Now, part of this report is what you would call, I think you would call traditional, hardcore
Rocco
intelligence gathering,
over on
where
Rumble.
They made a reasoned, evidence-based
Absolutely.
case that certain sites
If
were
you know,
linked to Russian influence,
just,
linked to the Russian
go
government.
for it, buddy.
In addition to
Pass
that,
it on.
however, they also
Then
said
I don't have to look it up.
that sites that, quote, generate their own momentum and have opinions that are in line with those accounts are part of a propaganda ecosystem. Now, this is just another word for guilt by association. And this is the problem with the whole idea of trying to identify which accounts are actually the Internet Research Agency and which ones are just people who followed those accounts or retweeted them. Twitter initially did
You
not
are fake news.
More than a handful of IRA accounts. It wasn't until they got into an argument with the Senate Select Intelligence Committee that they came back with a different answer.
Okay, so scale matters, but let me go through a couple of quick questions that I think are part of the reason that we have this select committee. This country has political parties and people from what one might call the extreme left and extreme right. And even Congress has people that might be considered outside the main street of Republican and Democratic thinking. Those people speak regularly, and they have since our founding. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the ACLU and journalists almost always support their right to say what they believe, even if you disagree.
Absolutely.
And our Constitution says we will make no law to restrain exactly that kind of free speech.
Yes.
And that includes people who promote the idea that we should redistribute all wealth in a communist type way. As a matter of fact, we still have a
Impish is
communist
okay.
party
I
in the
had
United
her
States. Isn't that
say
correct?
phrases like
Okay, so
the Red
limit
Sox
of free
and
speech
Kapak
historically
to
has
make sure
been
that she wasn't that
incitement
bad.
to violence,
And she was okay.
or anarchy, the actual overthrow of a government. Anything other than that is historically covered by the First Amendment.
Yes.
Those
So
are
when we
some
look
caterpillar
at
eyebrows.
the very nature of the State Department funding to
For the fat
affect
guy in the back?
domestic U.S. speech,
Yeah, it looks like he's suffocating.
was that speech outside the legal bounds? Did it call for insurrection or other criminal activities that would destroy our government?
No, I mean, we did not. I mean, we're not saying that that didn't happen, but we're describing people having political arguments online.
Right. So let me just, because my time's limited like everyone's. So it's suffice to say that every bit of the speech, or virtually every bit of the speech, whether foreign or domestic online, fell within the normal protections of the First Amendment, and the very act of federal dollars being used to stifle that speech is, in fact, historically what we would consider an indictment against the First Amendment protections.
Correct.
That is why we have this subcommittee. That is why we are here today. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman, and a great point. I now recognize the gentlelady from Florida for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Taibbi, I want to ask about journalistic ethics and information sources. The Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics asserts that journalists should avoid political activities that can compromise integrity or credibility. Being a Republican witness today certainly casts a cloud over your objectivity.
I remember that.
Deeper concern that I have relates
Fuck
to
you,
the
Walkerman
ethics of how
Schultz.
journalists receive and present certain information. Journalists should avoid accepting spoon-fed, cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed
I'll
to
do
reach
that
a
for
foregone
sure.
easily disputed or invalid conclusion. Would you agree with that?
I think it depends.
I intended on watching
Really?
just a very
You
little
wouldn't
bit of
agree
it,
that
but
a journalist should
everybody
avoid
said it was really
spoon-fed,
good.
cherry-picked information if it's likely to be slanted, incomplete, or designed to reach a foregone, easily
We
disputed
took
or
a
invalid
poll and they
conclusion?
wanted to watch the whole damn thing. So I'll sit here
Congresswoman,
and comment
I've
on it.
done probably a dozen stories involving whistleblowers. Every reported story that I've ever done across 3 decades involves sources who have
Corruption.
motives. Every time you do a story, you're making a balancing test
Okay.
between the public
Reclaiming my
interest.
time. Thank you very much. I ask you this
Reclaiming my
because
time.
before you became Elon Musk's hand-picked journalist, so
Oh,
and
fuck
pardon the
you,
oxymoron,
bitch.
you stated this on Joe Rogan's podcast about being spoon-fed information, and I quote, "I think that's true of any kind of journalism," and you'll see it behind me here. "I think that's true of any kind of journalism. Once
Do
you
you think
start
anybody
getting
actually
handed
likes this
things,
bitch?
then you've lost. They have you at that point, and you got to get out of that habit. You just can't cross that line. Do you still believe what you told Mr. Rogan? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yep.
Yes.
Good. Now, you crossed that line with the Twitter files.
No.
Elon
Jesus
Musk, it's my
Christ.
time. Please do not interrupt me. Elon Musk spoon-fed you his cherry-picked information, which you must have suspected promotes a slanted viewpoint, or at the very least
Yeah, I
generates
don't
another
understand
right-wing
that.
conspiracy theory. You violated your own standard, and you appear to have benefited from it. Before the release of the emails in August of last year, you had 661,000 Twitter followers. After the Twitter files,
I
your
would. This is
followers
good
doubled,
advertisement.
and now it's 3 times what it was last August. I imagine
Cunt?
your Substack
Yes.
readership,
Debbie
which is a
Wasserman
subscription,
Schultz is a
increased
cunt.
significantly because of the work that you did for Elon Musk. Now, I'm not asking you to put a dollar figure on it, but it's quite obvious that you've profited from the Twitter files. You hit the jackpot on that Vegas slot machine to which you referred. That's true, isn't it?
I've also reinvested.
You've made some. No. Is it true that you have profited since you were this recipient of the Twitter files? You've made money.
I've made money
Yes or no?
since receiving the
It's
Twitter
probably
files.
a wash, honestly.
So
You have made
when are you
money
gonna
that
call
you did
me?
not have before, correct?
But I've also spent money that I didn't have
Okay.
before. I just hired a
I-
whole group of people to
Patently
investigate.
obvious answer,
Fluent
reclaiming my time.
smut.
Attention is a powerful drug. Eyeballs, money, prominence, attention, all of it points to problems with accuracy and credibility. And the larger point, which is social media companies are not biased against conservatives. And if anything, they ignored their own policies by allowing Trump and other MAGA extremists to post incessant lies, endangering public safety and even our democracy. Hypocrisy
Hard
is the
pass.
hangover of
Hard
an addiction
pass.
to attention. Now, I want to point out another alleged finding from the Twitter files. Mr. Schellenberger, you've referenced several times this $3.4 million that the FBI paid to Twitter in 2020 that was referenced in General Counsel Jim Baker's email. I first want to confirm that nowhere in the email does Baker say that the money was paid to censor information, take down posts, suspend accounts, or do anything relating to content moderation. Is that correct?
It is.
Thank you. But honest reporting would have explained that the $3.4 million was paid to release information, not censor it. One of my colleagues on this panel repeated your distortions and told Americans this reimbursement was used to, quote, censor certain stories. That's a flat out lie. Mr. Schellenberger, are you aware of Section 2706 under the Stored Communications Act? It says when social media companies comply with subpoenas, warrants, or court orders, it costs them money, so they get reimbursed. The FBI makes these requests and reimbursements to discover evidence and run relevant to a criminal investigation. Let me repeat that. The FBI makes these requests to help catch the bad guys. That helps keep child predators off social media sites. It helps keep violent criminals off our streets. I support the FBI and our law enforcement agencies. It would be nice if our Republican colleagues did the same and not fabricate explanations for payments that are defined for clear purposes in federal law. My time is just about wrapped up.
May I
The
respond?
truth
That
is that
list didn't
social
come
media
out like I
companies
thought it was
are
going to.
unregulated monoliths. They pose danger to individuals. They allow posts that bring harm, and that's the bottom line. That the other side will not tell you. I yield back the balance of my time.
No, she's being a smut.
Gentleman had no time to yield back, but I will let the gentleman, Mr. Schellenberger, respond. And I would also point out that I did not say what
Could be,
the
buddy.
FBI paid
I have
Twitter
enough
for. All I
context.
said was they paid Twitter $3.4 million.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. I
Mr.
didn't ask Mr. Schellenberger a question.
Yeah, but
My
the witness
understanding-
wants to respond, and the witness have been invited our guests, and frankly, they've been attacked by the
Well,
federal
please
government.
do that.
I'm going to let Mr.
Mine's
Schellenberger
still
answer that before
deleted.
recognizing Mr. Bishop.
So are you going to do that as we move down the line of questioners?
The gentleman has not been recognized. You had your 5 minutes, and frankly, I think that's at the discretion of the chair. Mr. Schellenberger, you can respond briefly.
I'll
No,
be brief,
I've-
which
I've
is
tried
that my
to-
understanding from
tried to
those
make it
files
look
is that
pretty, and
Twitter had decided
it
not
didn't
to
work.
take that money until recently. So if you read
I'll
that
put it in
email,
background.
what Stasha, I believe, the person that sent it is saying is that they started taking money after previously not taking it. And I believe that the reason that they had not taken it earlier was because they did not want that financial conflict clouding their relationship.
Mr. Chairman, the money is payment under
He's out
federal
of order.
law so that they
The
can
gentleman
recoup
from North
costs
Carolina, Mr. Bishop, is
for
recognized for 5
material
minutes.
that they've been asked
I thank the
for. That's
gentleman.
bottom line.
Mr. Taibbi, would you care to, I'm down here on this end, sir. Would you care to respond to the attack on your ethics? You weren't given really an opportunity to answer. And if you'd be brief, I've got a bunch of stuff I want to ask you as well.
Sure, just quickly, that moment on the Joe Rogan show, I was actually recounting a section from Seymour Hersh's book, Reporter, where he described a scene where the CIA gave him a story, and he was very uncomfortable. He said that I, who had always gotten the secrets, was being handed the secrets. Look, again, I've done lots of whistleblower stories. There's always a balancing test that you make when you're given material, and you're always balancing newsworthiness versus the motives of your sources. In this case, the newsworthiness clearly outweighed any other considerations, and I think everybody else who worked on the project agreed.
Doesn't it seem like any reporter who breaks a blockbuster story is going to get attention, and there may be even financial consequences that follow? It seems like as surely as the night follows the day, that's the case, right?
That is true, although I would like to clear up, some things that have been misrepresented. Not one of us has actually been paid to do any of this work. We've all, traveled on our own. We've hired our personnel on our own, and I've just hired a pretty large team to investigate this issue. Out of my own pocket.
The fact that the attempt comes from the dais across the aisle to smear you, frankly, I think liberals, if I understand that, in your background, you're both good liberals, and you come in, and the Democrats' hostility to what you've undertaken is astonishing to behold, but it's part of the picture we're seeing. In Twitter files number 15, Mr. Taibbi, you exposed Hamilton 68, a website associated with the German Marshall Fund that purported in a dashboard to identify Russian bot networks and became ubiquitously cited by media to identify media stories or narratives that supposedly flowed from Russia. From Russia! You showed that the front man for Hamilton 68 was Clint Watts, a former FBI agent. At Twitter, the trust and safety executives were ridiculing Hamilton 68 for the ludicrous identifications that it was making, which they could reverse engineer and figure out who those accounts were. And then in Twitter files number 17, after disclosing Mr. Watts' identity, you disclosed that J.M. Berger is the creator of Hamilton 68. And guess what? He was a federal contractor, right?
He was, yes. He denies that he worked on it for the Global Engagement Center, but he was an employee of theirs until about a month before the dashboard's release.
Just a month before it, he said, I believe publicly, that the dashboard was the product of 3 years' work. So doesn't it beg sort of the intriguing question whether the creation of this fraudulent Hamilton 68 dashboard was effectively underwritten by government funding?
Yes, I think that's a good question. Certainly the German Marshall Fund, which is the NGO that is at the top of the chain in this organization. It's the German Marshall Fund, then the Alliance for Securing Democracy, and then Hamilton 68. They're a federal contractor. They received over $1 million from the Department of Defense. The board of the Alliance for Securing Democracy has a former acting head of the CIA, a former deputy head of the NSA, a former chief of the DHS on it. So
I want to make, and the bigger point is hard because the examples sometimes start making it. I want to introduce you to, or introduce the country to somebody else. I think you've mentioned it in one of your writings, Richard Stengel. You know who that is?
Yes, he's the former, the first head of the Global Engagement Center.
I want the American people to hear from him for 30 seconds.
Basically, every country creates their own narrative story. And my old job at the State Department was what people used to joke as the chief propagandist job. We haven't talked about propaganda. Propaganda, I'm not against propaganda. Every country does it, and they have to do it to their own population.
Every country does it. Every country does propaganda, and they have to do it to their own people, is what Mr. Stengel said. If I understand correctly, he was the head of the Global Engagement Center at its creation, right?
He was, and in his book, Information Wars, there are a number of passages where he talks about creating a whole of government solution to the information problem. He hastened to say that he didn't want to create a quote information ministry, but what he was describing roughly approximates that.
In the half minute I've got left, he also was associated with Hamilton 68, right?
The Global Engagement Center certainly had ties to Hamilton 68.
I think it's closer than that. Well, that'll come out.
Okay. Well, I'd be anxious to hear that.
I hope I'll get yielded in a minute or two from somebody else down the way. There's all sorts of stuff to disclose. This committee has to uncover not that single instance, but this system that you have described. This is the hope that Americans have to set this right. This committee, and that hostility shows what we're up against. It's not 3 pillars to the system, it is 4. And you're seeing the left move to crush you and anybody else who tries to expose this. I yield.
I thank the gentleman for his great 5 minutes, and we now yield to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know what to say after that last one. We're fellow Americans. And we're elected officials. When
This guy looks like he's touched
the truth, and
somebody.
we're trying to participate in the process,
And not in a
getting
good
at the
way.
truth. Mr.
In
Tiabbi,
Minecraft.
you have said that this isn't really a matter of right or left, that there are lots of different ideological colorations involved in the Twitter files. Is that roughly correct?
Yes.
And Mr. Schellenberg, you would agree with that?
Yes.
So when you release information, have you released any information of, for example, right-wing elements or
That's a
the
weird
Trump
combo,
White House
brother.
attempting to moderate content at Twitter?
Yes. No, not the Trump White House per se,
Any
although I did report initially in the first Twitter files that the Trump White House had made and requests and had been honored.
Mr. Schellenberg?
I did not find that.
You haven't found it. So we had a hearing the other day on Twitter, and we had 4 witnesses, 3 for the majority, 1 for the minority, and all 4 testified under oath. They had never received a request for content moderation or takedown by the Biden White House, but they did from Donald Trump's White House. And specifically, the case brought up was an exchange between Donald Trump, then President of the United States, and Chrissy Teigen, where he had called her something and she called him something back. I won't repeat it. And this was under oath confirmed. Yeah, that happened. And that the White House shortly thereafter, after Teigen
It's a disorder.
had her email about the president, which was pejorative, that the White House called Twitter to try to take on the content. You aware of that, Mr. Tiabbi?
Yeah, I've certainly heard that in the news.
But did you see that email exchange?
No, I have not seen an exchange from the Trump White House.
So
I have seen one from Congressman
Get your
Schiff and one from
representative.
Senator Angus
F
King.
tier.
Yeah, nice try. We're talking about the Trump White House and people under oath confirming
especially
it.
those arms.
And
Those are
my
way too
question
big.
is, in the Twitter files, did Elon Musk or Twitter provide you with that exchange with Chrissy Teigen?
No,
we're gonna
that's
talk about-
probably because the searches that I was making.
Well, probably
I
because
can't
it
even
didn't
talk about Chrissy
confirm
Teigen
the
here.
bias that this is all about, as the gentleman from Texas would say, the left attempting to control content, when in fact the evidence is the Trump White House most certainly attempted to control content on Twitter. Mr. Schellenberger, were you aware of that, or is this all news to you?
You're
I already answered that question.
No, I mean specifically the Teigen exchange.
Yeah, the Teigen exchange was news to me.
I'm probably
Hate fuck
mispronouncing the name, I'm
is
sorry.
a possible smash. I'm just saying.
Let me ask, have you combed the so-called Twitter files to look at other examples that aren't about the Biden White House or the FBI that might in fact involve people from the right ideologically or from the Republican ranks? Just to be fair.
Well, again, Mr. Congressman, I mentioned before, we're focused not on the Biden administration or the Trump administration. In fact, just this
100%.
morning, we released an exchange
That's what I was saying,
where
but I
Twitter
can't.
talked about vetting
Can't
the
talk about
accounts
that
of
one
both
in depth,
Mr. Biden and Mr.
but
Trump.
we all know.
And really, we were looking at the intelligence agencies when we were doing this research. And as I mentioned before, their conclusions targeted people on both the left and the right globally, again, including the
Hi,
Yellow
Liza.
Vest movement in France.
Yeah, they've all been doing
Maduro
that.
accounts in South America, and leftist news organizations in America like Truth Out and Consortium. Some of those people are my friends, actually. And we found those in intelligence lists that were passed on to Twitter, just as we found lists that included ordinary Trump supporters.
Thank you. Reclaiming my time, I appreciate that, because in some ways what you just said undermines the premise of this select committee, which is that the federal government has been organized to weaponize against conservative voices. And of course, what you've just indicated in your testimony is, well, actually, that's not the evidence you found.
No, I think this committee, my understanding is that they're concerned about the weaponization of the government against free speech, which is certainly what we're finding.
I thank you. My time
Was
is
there anything
expired, but I
there
appreciate
when you
your
checked it
understanding of
out?
our committee. I have a different understanding. I yield back.
Well, you got the wrong understanding. Last week in the full Judiciary Committee hearing, I introduced into the record a story of a left-wing journalist who said that talked about the FBI putting a paid informant, a felon, in the Black Lives Matter movement in Denver. I want to focus on the First Amendment, just like protecting the First Amendment, just like these guys
Point
do.
of order, Mr. Chair. Are you going to respond after every?
No, I'm taking my
everything?
5 minutes.
This is
I
your.
can take
Oh,
my
you're.
5
Oh,
minutes.
it's your 5 minutes
I can
now.
take my 5 minutes when I want to, and I'm taking my 5 minutes.
Okay,
now.
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well,
I would ask for an additional few seconds for being interrupted by the ranking member. But the truth is, we want to focus on protecting the First Amendment. Mr. Schellenberger, you a Republican?
No, I'm not.
You got any pro-Trump bumper stickers on your car?
I voted for Biden.
Voted for Biden. You know how many MAGA hats laying around your house, right?
I do not.
Yeah, but you said earlier, both you and Mr. Taibbi said this is the most chilling thing you've ever seen as journalists. Mr. Taibbi, the same thing. You're not a Republican either, right?
No, I'm not.
You didn't vote for. I mean, this is about protecting the First Amendment. Mr. Taibbi, I want to read from your Twitter file number 9. You say this: after weeks of Twitter files, the Bureau issued a statement Wednesday, referring to the FBI. Here's what the FBI said: it is unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the American public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency. You then follow up. That's why I think you're an award-winning author. You then follow up.
I voted for
They
Joe
must
Biden.
think we're unambitious. If our sole aim is to discredit the FBI,
I bet you they won't
a
vote
whole
for him
range
again.
of government agencies discredit themselves in the Twitter files. And then you go on to, in this particular Twitter file, to talk about what Mr. Bishop was just talking about, the GEC at the State Department. You talk about the CIA. You talk about the DOD. You
Once
talk
you
about
get
the
dicked
FBI.
around,
you talk about
then
DHS. You talk about the
become
Foreign Intelligence Task Force, which is a
conservative.
combination
It's
of all
funny
these.
to see.
But there was one agency you didn't mention, because you didn't know at the time. One agency, you got almost the whole alphabet, but you didn't mention one agency, the FTC. Because you know about them now.
Yes, we
You know about them now in an up close and personal way. You didn't know then, but you do know now. December 2nd, as I said earlier, December 2nd, the first Twitter file comes out, Mr. Taibbi. And I think there are 5 others, including the ones from Mr. Schellenberger. December 13th, the very first letter that the FTC sends to Twitter after the Twitter files, 11 days after the first Twitter file.
That's what I figured. Or
5
he
of them come
voted
out.
for Trump.
The FTC's first demand
you've
in
always
that
avoided
first letter
it
after the Twitter
if it
files
doesn't
come out
fit,
is
so.
identify all journalists, I'm quoting, identify all journalists and other members of the media to whom Twitter worked with. You find that scary, Mr. Taibbi, that you got a federal government agency asking a private company, who in the press are you talking with?
Yeah, I do find it scary. I think it's none of the government's business which journalists a private company talks to and why. I think every journalist should be concerned about that, and the absence of interest in that issue by my fellow colleagues in the mainstream media is an indication of how low the business has sunk. There was once a real esprit de corps and camaraderie within media. Whenever one of us was
Wouldn't it be great
gone
if they
after,
just
we
get the
all
fuck
kind
out
of
of the
rose to
way and let
challenge.
us run our country?
Yeah,
Used to be the
and
case.
That is gone now. We don't protect
You know
one
what
another.
else used to happen? Democrats used to care about protecting First Amendment free speech rights too. Now it's like, okay, if you're
can't
attacking,
vote
and
in
I
this
said this on the
poll,
House floor.
so
I
it
said, don't
wasn't
think they
me.
won't come for you.
100% wasn't me. I can't
big
vote
tech,
my own
big
poll.
media, cancel culture. They may come for Republicans and conservatives now, but the mob is never satisfied. They will keep coming. Mr. Schellenberger, you know who the chair of the FTC is?
Not personally.
Lena Khan. Lena Khan. You know who she used to work for?
My understanding is the Judiciary Committee.
Yeah, she's worked for these folks. The same folks have been attacking you today.
2 more votes
Same
and I can
folks.
close the poll.
Chair of the FTC, worked for them. Here's what they said. Here's what she said in a letter
put it all
where they
behind
ask about
us
who these journalists. Again,
and
they
act
named
like it never
4
happened.
personally, 4 journalists by name. You were 2 of the 4. As I said before, I think it's frankly courageous and brave of you to show up today when you know the federal government's got an eye on you personally. Here's what they asked for in that letter. Any credentialing or background check Twitter has done on journalists. Now think about that. The federal government is saying, we want you to do a background check on members of the press. Freedom of the press mentioned in the First Amendment, and they're doing they want Twitter to do a background check on you before they can talk to you in
93%
America.
pass.
The
6%
FTC,
smash.
led by Lena Khan,
So
who
one
used to work for
person,
these guys,
big
is asking
smash.
that question. Now we know. Now we all know why. You guys said at the outset, this is the most chilling story. And you guys are New York Times bestsellers, award-winning journalists. But in all your time in the journalism field, this issue, most important. And how this, I think, what'd you call it, Mr. Schellenberg? This is complex. What'd you call it?
No kink shaming,
Censorship
Believers.
industrial complex.
Totally. This web of censorship, big government, big tech, NGOs, all this web of censorship that Mr. Bishop was getting into in his line of questioning. That's what this committee is going to get to. And that's not right or left. That's not, this is just right or wrong. This is wrong. We know it's wrong, and it's about protecting the First Amendment. I yield back. I now recognize the ranking member for her 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Taibbi, the emails and documents you've produced all date to around 2020. Is that correct?
No, there's a significant portion of them from 2017 and 2018 as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Schellenberger, what dates do you have?
I believe that we had emails including 2022, 2021, 2020.
That's also true.
2019.
And Mr.
Debbie
Taibbi said
Wasserman Schultz.
2018. Do
Hang
you have
on, I'll show
2018
you.
as well?
I can't remember.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Taibbi, how many employees did Twitter employ in approximately the time period of 2020, 2021? Do you know?
I don't.
Okay, it was 7,500. Do you know how many were in its legal team during that time period?
I don't. I'm sorry.
And do you know how many were in its public policy team?
I don't.
Mr. Schellenberger, do you know how many were employed in content moderation during that time?
I do.
Must give you access to.
I mean, we went through thousands of emails.
Did he give you access to all of the emails for the time period in which?
Yeah, I never had a single request denied. And not only that, but the amount of files that we were given were so voluminous that there was no way that anybody could have gone through them beforehand. And we never found an instance where there was any evidence that anything had been taken out.
Okay, so you would believe that you have probably millions of emails and documents, right? That's correct, would you say?
I don't know.
It looks like it's updated, buddy.
Okay, 100,000?
It's probably closer.
Probably, yeah.
Probably close to 100,000 that both of you are saying. Yet in the Twitter files, Mr. Taibbi, you've produced only 338 of those 100,000 emails. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And then who gave you access to these emails? Who was the
people at Twitter.
individual that gave you permission to access the emails?
Well, the attribution from my story is sources at Twitter, and that's what I'm going to refer to.
Okay. Did Mr. Musk contact you, Mr. Taibbi?
Again, the attribution from my story is sources at Twitter.
Mr. Schellenberger, did Mr. Musk contact you?
Actually,
God,
no.
what a
I was
smunt.
brought in by my friend Barry Weiss, and so this story, there's been a lot of
So
misinformation.
Mr. Weiss
or
brought you in.
disinformation about
Mr.
that.
Taibbi, Ms. Weiss, thank you. Mr. Taibbi, have you had conversations with Elon Musk?
I have.
Okay. Mr. Taibbi, did Mr. Musk place any conditions on the use of the
Would the gentlelady yield for a second?
as long as my time is not used.
Are you trying to get journalists?
No, I'm not
expose
trying to
their
get,
sources?
no, I'm not.
Well,
I
it
am
sure sounds
asking,
like it.
no, well, if you will let me finish. And you had conversations with him, you said you weren't going to agree to who your sources were. I'm not asking you your source. I'm asking you if you had conversations with the owner of Twitter. And did Mr. Musk place any conditions on your use of the emails or documents?
No, in fact, I was told explicitly that we were given license to look at present-day Twitter as well as past Twitter.
So you had unfiltered access to Twitter's internal communications and systems?
Yes.
Would those include HR files?
No. We did not have access to personal information of any kind. In fact, we signed a waiver
Have you produced that waiver to the members of anyone on this committee or any staff?
I'd be happy to produce it. I haven't, but I'd be happy.
Have you given all of the access to what you were given by your source to this
Shut
committee?
up, you smut.
No, I would never do that.
Okay. I didn't ask if you were giving the committee, the individuals, but all of the files? No, you have not?
No.
So what we're getting
No, hell
is
no,
your
bitch.
dissemination, your decision as to what was important and not important in that, correct?
Which is true in every news story.
In every story. But you have files that you say you are sharing, but those files are just a smaller period of the files. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes?
there's-
Okay, thank you. And the FTC investigation of Twitter, you knew that they were investigating Twitter before the time period that Mr. Musk came on?
I was aware of it, yeah.
And the FTC was concerned with user data being hacked or used? Is that correct, that they didn't have enough
Did she just say
checks and
words?
balances on that data?
Well, I wasn't privy to that part.
Have you seen the consent decree?
No, I have not.
Okay, well, the consent decree is concerned with user data, which would be probably the reason that they would
User
concerned
data?
if they're giving files to journalists that potentially data about users as well as data about individuals and employees would be given to them.
My understanding
So
is
I
that
didn't
they
ask
didn't
a question. I didn't ask you a question, sir. Okay? So do you know that Elon Musk paid $44 billion for Twitter? Is that correct, Mrs. Schellenberger? Were you aware of that?
Yes, I read that.
And did you know that he received that part of the funding from Saudi Arabia as well as Qatar?
I heard that.
And did you know that one of those individuals who owns Binance was the company, but Binance, while he has Canadian citizenship, he is a Chinese national. Were you aware of that?
I did not know that.
Okay, and that he stated that that was for the cause. But thank you very much for answering my questions. I yield back.
Chair now recognize the gentlelady from Wyoming for 5 minutes. Would the gentlelady yield for 20 seconds?
Yes.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. I just
Right.
think this is interesting. First, the FTC is asking for your backgrounds. And now the ranking member of the Committee on the Weaponization
Holy
of Government
shit.
is asking for your sources. If
I
that
never
doesn't
asked them
raise-
for their sources.
Yes,
I
you
did
did, and
not
we-
ask for sources.
what?
I asked if
Ooh.
they
Gentlelady
were
is not-
talking
the
to
gentlelady
Elon
is
Musk.
I'm gonna
not
sit and
And
listen.
they said that they were not talking. Well, you are not
wanna hear
going
the
to
cat
say,
fight.
I will
I've
yield back.
asked for
I will
sources.
yield back to the
Thank
gentlelady.
you.
I thank her for
With
yielding.
respect, you asked me who gave me who gave me
I
the
asked you who
files.
gave it to you, and once you said they were your sources, I then asked you if you had spoken with Elon Musk. I did not ask you who those sources were.
The
For
gentlelady
the
from
record. Keep the
Wyoming is
record correct.
recognized, and she will receive an additional 20 seconds. The gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes of question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today and all of your important work that you have put into writing the Twitter files. Thank you for your willingness to come here and be subjected to the kind of abuse that we've
She
observed
100% asked who
when
the
all
source
you're
was.
trying to do is talk about the importance of the First Amendment and why the federal government should not be doing what they did and what has been evidenced in the Twitter files. I often say that sunshine is the best disinfectant. And boy, after listening to you and reading the reports that I have, does our federal government need to be fumigated? Mr. Taibbi, I'd like to focus on Twitter Files Part 9, Twitter and other government agencies, as I think a lot of the evidence you present in this section touches on the major takeaways that are so important for Americans to understand about the seriousness of what was found in the Twitter files. In your testimony describing the cooperation between the federal government and tech companies like Twitter, you stated, quote, "A focus of this growing network is making lists of people whose opinions, beliefs, associations, or sympathies are deemed to be misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation," end quote. What's interesting to me is that what is missing from that list is the word unlawful.
That's true, yes.
And so it notably seems to be missing from the FBI's lexicon. In part 9 of the Twitter files, Mr. Taibbi notes that the main conduit sending requests to Twitter would routinely label these flags as violations of Twitter's terms of service. Even Jim Baker, a Twitter employee at the time and someone who is allegedly a former general counsel of the FBI, stated, quote, "but also odd that they are searching for violations of our policies." Mr. Taibbi, what was the approximate percentage of the FBI requests to Twitter being based on the justification that the tweet violated the company's terms of service?
Ms. Congressman, I would say that that was a standard disclosure or a standard disclaimer in almost all the communications from the FBI to Twitter. There would usually be a line in there saying something like, "For your consideration, we believe the following 207 accounts may have violated your terms of service." But notably, they very rarely focused on words like truth or inaccuracy. Very often they use the words malinformation, misinformation, or disinformation. And so I think they're trying to shift the focus from one idea to the other.
Okay, I think that's interesting as well. What do you make of the finding that the FBI found it its responsibility to police violation of a private company's terms of service as a priority over policing violations of U.S. federal law?
There were a couple of very telling emails that we published. One was by a lawyer named Sasha Cardile, where the company was being so overwhelmed by requests from the FBI, and in fact, they gave each other a sort of digital high five after one batch, saying that was a monumental undertaking to clear all of these. But she noted that she believed that the FBI was essentially doing word searches keyed to Twitter's terms of service, looking for violations of terms of service, specifically so that they could make recommendations along those lines, which we found interesting.
Do you believe it's the FBI's responsibility to police the terms of service for a private company?
I do not. I think you cannot have a state-sponsored anti-disinformation effort and also without directly striking at the whole concept of free speech. I think the two ideas are in direct conflict. And this is a fundamental misunderstanding, I think, of a lot of the people who get into this world. Some of them, I believe, in a well-meaning way. I think they're actually trying to accomplish something positive, but they don't understand what free speech means and what happens when you do this. It undermines the whole concept that truth doesn't come from, isn't mandated, that we arrive at it through debate and discussion.
Well, in fact, wouldn't you agree with me that the First Amendment is broader than Twitter's terms of service?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah.
And wouldn't you also agree with me that the FBI is responsible for complying with the First Amendment, not Twitter's terms of service?
I would hope so, yes.
You also highlighted the presence of people like Jim Baker at Twitter. And again, I've noted that he is allegedly a former FBI employee. Part 9 also speaks of a former other government association employees working at Twitter. What was the extent to which you found former FBI or other intelligence community employees working at Twitter? And did you find it odd?
There was a significant quantity of people who had come from the intelligence world or who had worked at state agencies. In fact, that was a very common method by which members of people who are currently working in government would reach out to Twitter. For instance, we found an email by a current State Department official who reached out to a former State Department official asking that 14 ordinary Americans have their accounts deleted. That was in a recent Twitter Files release. So yes, there's an extraordinary number of these people. A lot of them come from the intelligence world, which we did find unusual.
It is a private company.
Okay, thank you very much,
Richard,
and I yield.
100%. However, when the government inserts themselves and makes or works together
Mr.
to usurp the First Amendment,
I still try to figure out
that's
where
when
all
it
of
becomes
this
a
is going to
problem.
go. But we've heard a lot.
There
from
was
our
money
Republican
going to
colleagues,
them.
claiming that somehow
There was
all of this
all kinds of
interaction
things
has led to
being said to them.
Twitter censoring
The FBI involved in
conservative voices.
censorship.
And I really want
Like
to look
that's
at
where
what
it
the
crosses
evidence
the line.
is that
A private
has or
company
has not
being
happened.
a private
In 2020,
company
Twitter commissioned
is
an
fine,
objective study
but
to
a
examine
private
whether
company
its
that uses
algorithms
government money and
disproportionately
resources
promotes
to usurp
conservative
the First
or
Amendment is
liberal
where it becomes
voices.
an issue.
This was a massive study by researchers from the University of Cambridge and Berkeley. The analysis examined millions of Twitter accounts and 6.2 million news articles that were shared within the United States. The study results were quite clear. Twitter's algorithms actually amplifies conservative voices far more than liberal voices. So whatever comes of this question about pressure from the federal government, at least up until 2020, it didn't have an effect. A separate study, this one's from
Interested
Indiana
in that
University,
last
found
one.
that partisan accounts, especially conservative accounts, tend to receive more followers and follow more automated accounts. So, Mr. Taibbi and Mr. Schallenberger, are you familiar with these studies?
I am.
I am.
The hell is Levy doing and giving evidence?
Whatever you may be trying to tell us, the effect on
I
Twitter
agree too,
didn't
Stevie.
happen.
Like, it would be fun.
No, I
No,
don't agree.
Excuse me, it's my time, thank you. I can also give you many real analytical studies based on actual evidence. But since I have only
What's up,
5
buddy?
minutes, Mr. Chairman, if I might enter into the record.
How was the birthday
these
party?
studies of what actually is going
Exhausting.
on with regard to
How we got there?
censorship or not censorship. Mr. Chairman, may I enter those into the file?
Yeah, do not touch that, sweetheart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I take that silence as a yes.
Did you identify the document? I'm sorry.
Certainly. These documents, studies that were done by universities and
We usually take a little bit, it takes a little bit more for unanimous consent than these documents, but without objection, we'll accept them into the record.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. These studies found that to the extent that far-right accounts are being suspended, it's not because of their ideology, but because they are spreading conspiracy theories like QAnon. You can see those up on the board. Talk about nonsense. QAnons, are you really ready for these dots? Where in the country is gone? The rest of the world will go. Q is real. On and on. They're up there, and they're now part of the file also. This type of speech that perhaps our Republican colleagues believe social media platforms, all of whom, by the way, are private companies, not government, are somehow obligated to post. No matter how crazy, how offensive a post might be, these private companies presumably must advance the lies, conspiracy theories, personal attacks promoted by radicals. Now, I'm pretty sure that if the Democrats held a hearing today to force Fox News to post certain content, my Republican colleagues would be up in arms. And this is particularly ironic because we know for a fact that Fox News does spread disinformation and does so while knowing that the material is false. We've learned from the Dominion lawsuit that Fox hosts lied about the 2020 election. Its executives knew they were lying, and yet they were allowed to continue peddling their lies.
Always got to be a conspiracy.
Here's a reporter speaking to this issue.
Stupid question.
Fox News reporter. He said,
Looking at a new vinyl.
Insane.
Pink Floyd,
There's
Dark Side of the
two Fox
Moon.
executives describing
Or
Fox decision to push forward
where
election
did it go?
lies as chasing the nuts off the cliff. There are two other quotes.
Damn it, I've lost it. Maybe I'll just go with Dark Side of the Moon.
That I think we ought to be aware of.
Dark Side of the
Fox
Moon's hard to
News.
beat unless it's secret.
It is.
So
They were promoting.
Yeah, that's what I was
Trump's
thinking.
lies. Quote up there, big protest in DC on January 6th. Be there, will be.
And my daughter's about to pull my pants down in the middle of the store. Stop
Call
that.
to arms.
fantastic.
And all of us in this building know the result of that call. The second one, Mike Pence didn't have the courage to do what needed to be done to protect our country. This is the speech that my Republican colleagues would have us to believe is being wrongly.
Metallica, Justice for All. It's not a bad
censored
choice.
by
Hang on, I'll see if I got it.
companies. It's offensive, it's absurd, No private company has an obligation to amplify anything, and especially not messages that strike at the heart of our democracy. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Utah is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, witnesses, for being here. I suppose this is maybe a little bit outside your comfort zone. You didn't find yourself with this kind of attention when you began this endeavor, but I appreciate the courage and the commitment you've made to doing that. We may not agree on a lot of things when it comes to policy and politics, but I think we agree on our concern regarding the topic today.
Oh, trust me, Laney, I already did.
I'll actually
She
follow
is high on sugar.
from, my Democratic friend and colleague and the things that he has said, because I agree with him. Private companies, I mean, Twitter, Facebook, they can ban whoever they want. They can mute. They can deplatform. They can set up whatever policy they want, and they have the ability to do that. I don't care about that. I agree with that. They should have that authority. The thing that we're concerned about is when the federal government, by proxy, essentially contracts this out. Because the federal government can't ban speech. They can define time and place, but they cannot ban content. And anyone would be foolish to think that when the FBI comes to a private company and highlights speech and then would expect them to do nothing. Of course they would respond to that. The FBI knew they would respond.
Staffers always look angry.
The FBI
it's because they get shit on all day by these
And
Congress
I could use a couple analogies if I could,
men
and they
and
sound
women.
dramatic, but they're exactly right. It's illegal for the United States to assassinate a foreign leader. It would be illegal for the United States to pay $3.2 million to someone to go assassinate a foreign leader. It's illegal in some cases for the United States, or not illegal, but we would have to have a policy debate whether we would invade another country. It would be illegal for the
Ooh, what
United
about the
States
quintessential
to pay
Blink-182 album?
Wagner Group in Russia to go and fight the battles for them. And that's exactly what the FBI did here. They said, well, we can't do this ourselves. We'll contract it out. We'll launder this effort.
I almost feel like I need to, if only because of the artistry on the cover.
To that. Do you think I'm overly dramatic, or do you think I'm wrong in my characterization of what we see here?
I don't. I think that's absolutely correct. Freedom of speech is the foundation for our democracy, and what we've seen here is federal government putting extraordinary amounts of pressure both on Twitter and Facebook. And we haven't talked about Facebook, but we now know that we have the
nurse
White
one?
House demanding that Facebook
That's the one.
take down factual information, and Facebook doing that. And with Matt's thread this morning, we saw the government contractors demanding the same thing of Twitter. Accurate information, they said, that needed to be taken down in order to advance a narrative.
And I have to interrupt just to
shit's
agree
rough,
with
though.
you. For heaven's sakes, again, we've heard over here.
Before and after.
Trust media. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, they have the Batman Forever soundtrack.
Description, the media. I would love to engage in that because we've seen plenty of it over the last 6 years, and it's not coming from just Fox News. New York Times, CBS, NBC, every single one of them were saying things that they knew was not true. And they didn't say it once, they said it for years. And the White House, again, trying to stifle things that they know is true, but it doesn't fit their narrative. And I got to give one illustration in the few minute I have left. When you have an agent, Mr. Chan, who goes to his Twitter and says, please see below list of Twitter accounts which we believe violate your terms of service. I mean, how do you respond to that and defend that? Yeah, FBI should be looking at other private companies' policies and then highlighting, hey, these people might be violating your policies. Either one of you, Mr. Taibbi.
If I could, I think thank you, Mr. Congressman, and there's an important point, in conjunction with our own research.
I'm fairly eclectic, Bob. That's the thing. When I find the music that I like, it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily by the same artist each time. I sort of just
very telling
pick the songs
video
that I like and add them all to a playlist.
Where the director of Stanford's
I feel like I need some
election
blues or
integrity
something as well.
partnership talks about how CISA, the DHS agency, didn't have the capability to do election monitoring, and so that they kind of stepped into
There you go, Ozzy.
Oh, that's a good point, actually. Hang on.
Between DHS or CISA and this group EIP. For instance, we would see a communication that said, from CISA escalated by EIP. So they were essentially
What kind of
identical
music
in the
do you
eyes of
like?
the company. EIP
Says
It's
Barb.
eclectic.
data, and this
Yeah.
is a reference to what you
Yeah.
brought up, Mr. Congressman.
Ooh, Miles Davis.
According to their own data, they significantly targeted more what they call disinformation on the right than on the left by a factor, I think, of about 10 to 1. So, and I say that as not a Republican at all. It's just a fact of what we're looking at. So yes, we have come to the realization that this bright line that we imagine that exists between, say, the FBI or the DHS or the GEC and these private companies is illusory, and that what's more important is this constellation of kind of quasi-private organizations that do this work.
Well, and we're over time, so I'll conclude with reemphasizing this. By a factor of 10 to 1, they tried to mute conservative thought. And the federal government cannot contract out suppression of free expression. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman.
Okay, I think I'm fairly happy. So I've got the Dark Side of the Moon remaster. I've picked up Metallica, the Black Album remastered, and I got a Blink 182 simply because I'm going to be staring at that cover album for so long.
When was the first time that Mr. Musk approached you about writing the Twitter files?
Again, Congresswoman, that would.
I just need a date, sir.
But I can't give it to you, unfortunately, because this is a question of sourcing, and I don't give up. I'm a journalist. I don't reveal my source.
It's a question of chronology.
No, that's a question
Because
of
you
sourcing.
earlier said that someone had sent you through the internet some message about whether or not you would be interested in some information.
Yes, and I refer to that person as a source.
So you're not going to tell us when Musk first approached you?
Again, Congressman,
So
you're
you have to
asking me
say
to,
yes or
you're
no.
asking a journalist to reveal a
So then you
source.
consider Mr. Musk to be the direct source of all this?
No, now you're trying to get me to say that he is the source. I
Well,
just
it
can't answer
either
your
is or
question.
he isn't. If you're telling me you can't answer because it's your source, well, then that the only logical conclusion is that he is in fact your source.
Well, you're free to conclude that.
Well, sir, I just don't understand. You can't have it both ways, but let's move on because.
Well, no, he can. He's a journalist.
No, he can't, because either Musk is the source and he can't talk about it, or Musk is not the source. And if Musk is not the source, then he can discuss
No one
his
has yielded. The
conversations with
gentlelady's out of order. You don't get
And
to
she's
speak.
out of
every
order
time.
because
not
he's
recognized. The
interrupted.
gentleman is not
Mr. Chairman,
recognized.
you're not recognizing
my
my
time.
He has not
Mr.
said
Chairman,
that.
I don't.
What he has
talking
said
about
is he's
his-
not going to
Chairman,
reveal his source. And the
I
fact
did
that
not yield
Democrats
my
are
time
pressuring
to
him
the
to do
chairman
so
or
is
the
such a
regulator.
We're not.
violation.
We're asking him
I
about
have
his
my
time.
Holy
time.
shit.
The gentlelady has not yielded you time. You don't
I
get
have
to
not
just talk
yielded
over
time
her.
to anybody. I want to reclaim my time, and I would ask the chairman to give me back some of the time because of the interruption. Mr. Chairman, I'm asking
She's
you.
an apology if you
You
actually
will give
talk,
me
so
the
Jesus.
seconds that I lost.
We will give you that 10 seconds.
Thank you. Now, let's talk about another item that you, when you responded to the ranking member, you said that you had free license to look at everything, but yet you yourself posted on your I guess it's kind of like a web page. I don't quite understand what Substack is, but that what I can say is that in exchange for the opportunity to cover a unique and explosive story, I had to agree to certain conditions. What were those conditions? She asked you that question and you said you had none, but you yourself posted that you had conditions.
No, the conditions I've explained multiple times.
No, sir, you've not explained. You told her in response to her question that you had no conditions. In fact, you kind of used the word license, that you were free to look at all of them, all 100,000 emails.
I was, the question was posed, was I free to write about?
Sir, did you have any conditions?
The condition was that we published
Sir,
on
did you
Twitter.
have any conditions, yes or no? A simple question.
Yes.
All right, could you tell us what conditions those were?
The conditions were an attribution, sources at Twitter, and that we break any news on Twitter.
But you didn't break it on Twitter. Did you send the file that you released today to Twitter first?
Did I send the,
Sir, I'm
actually I
asking you
did, yes.
today.
Yeah.
Did you send it to Twitter first?
The Twitter
That was
files
one of the
thread?
conditions? Yes or no, sir?
The Twitter files thread actually did come out first.
But sir, you said earlier that you had to attribute all the sources to Twitter first. What you released today, did you send that to Twitter first?
No. I posted it on Twitter.
First, sir. Or did you give it to the ranking member, to the
All
chairman
of
of the
them.
committee or the staff of the committee first?
Well, that's not breaking the story. That's giving, yes, I did give.
So you gave all the information that you did not give to the Democrats, you gave it to the Republicans first, then you put it on Twitter?
Actually,
They just want the soundbite.
chronology is a little bit confused.
Well,
It's
then
more or
tell
less
us
the
what the
same time.
chronology was.
I believe the thread came out first
Where?
on Twitter.
On Twitter. So then you afterwards gave it to the Republicans and not the Democrats?
Yes, because I'm submitting it for the record as my statement.
Did you give it to them in advance?
I gave it to them today.
You gave it to them today, but you still have not given anything to the Democrats. Well, I'll move on. And I wanted to ask Mr. Schellenberger the same question, sir. When did you first visit with or get contacted by Mr. Musk?
I'm not going to reveal my sources, but like I said, I was invited by Barry Weiss.
I'm not asking for sources, sir. I'm just asking
Yeah,
for chronology.
I
When
was-
did you first make contact with Mr. Musk?
I don't know the exact date.
Oh shit, you bitch. You know, from way back
It was
door and
December.
clips to release the source there.
December of, well, there's a lot of Decembers in history.
December of
sir.
last year.
Which December?
December of last year, ma'am.
Last year, the 22?
Yes.
All right. Now, in your discussion, in your answer, you also said that you were invited by a friend, Barry Weiss.
My friend Barry Weiss.
So this friend works for Twitter, or what is her?
She's a journalist.
Sir, I didn't ask you a question. I'm now asking Mr. Schellenberger a question. Please
Yes,
do
ma'am.
not
Barry Weiss is
interrupt.
a journalist.
I'm sorry, sir.
She's a journalist.
Jesus
She's a
Christ.
journalist. So you work in concert with
This
her?
doesn't look good for them
yeah.
at all, ever.
Do you know when she first was
But they don't
contacted
seem
by
to
Mr.
give a
Musk?
damn.
I don't know.
You don't know.
I didn't
You're
either,
in this
Richard.
as a threesome?
Okay, I'm gathering
there
that the
was many
wind
more
was pretty
people
bad and no one could hear me.
There was many more people involved with it. Are you being paid to be here today, either through consulting fees,
No,
campaign contribution to your
absolutely
next
not.
run?
Gentlelady's
She
time
just
has
asked him
expired.
if he was involved in a
Expired.
threesome.
Absolutely not.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
Thank you.
I don't know what to say other than I'll ask the gentleman from North Dakota for 5 minutes.
Thank you, yes, Mr. Chairman, and I'll yield my 5 minutes.
Oh,
to you.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. I do think it's worth pointing out that, I have co-sponsored, I think some of my colleagues have co-sponsored the SHIELD Act
Yeah,
in
I know.
previous Congresses with Democrats to protect what we see them trying to do today, protect journalists from having to reveal their sources to government. That used
I
to be
saw
a
three
shared
of them
position
at,
in the Congress. Unfortunately, as we're seeing
it was
now,
the Joe
multiple
Lewis
occasions,
that-
it's not the position
2008.
anymore. Mr. Schellenberg, I want to go to Twitter Files Part 7. I related a lot of what you put in there in my opening statement. And I want to give you as much time as you want, because I'm going to read the very first sentence, because something jumped out at me when I read the first sentence. In Twitter Files number 7, the FBI and the Biden laptop. You say this: how the FBI and intelligence community discredited factual information about the Biden foreign business dealings both after and before the New York Post revealed the contents of his laptop on October 14th, 2020. And what kind of jumped
No
out at me
information
was
voters.
the way you framed
Waiting
it,
for the
because you did it
soundbite.
backwards from what it's normally said. Normally you would say, the sentence would read, foreign business dealings both before and after. But I assume you did that for a reason, because in fact, I think the next sentence, you say social media companies discredit leaked information about Hunter Biden before and after. You use the normal, customary way in the second sentence, but the first sentence strikes me as you were trying to emphasize the before component of that statement. And I want you to just walk us through why you said that, because when I read it, it certainly was an operation both before and after, as you said, after and before.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Reading through the whole sweep of events, I do not know the extent to which the influence operation aimed at pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop was coordinated. I don't know who all was involved, but what we saw was you saw Aspen and Stanford many months before then saying, don't cover the material in the hack and leak without emphasizing the fact that it could be disinformation. Okay, so they're priming journalists to not cover a future hack and leak in the way that journalists have long been trained to, with in the tradition of the Pentagon Papers, made famous by the Steven Spielberg movie. They were saying cover the fact that it probably came from the Russians. Then you have the former general counsel to the FBI, Jim Baker, the former deputy chief of staff to the FBI, both arriving at Twitter in the summer of 2020, which I find what an interesting coincidence. Then when the New York Post publishes its first article on October 14th, it's Jim Baker who makes the most strenuous argument within Twitter. Multiple emails, multiple messages saying this doesn't look real. There's intelligence experts saying that this could be Russian disinformation. He is the most strenuous person inside Twitter arguing that it's probably Russian disinformation. The internal evaluation by Yoel Roth, who testified in front of this committee, was that it was what it looked to be, which was that it was not a result of a hack and leak operation. And why did he think that? Because the New York Post had published the FBI subpoena taking the laptop in December of 2019, and they published the agreement that the computer store owner had with Hunter Biden that gave him permission after he abandoned the laptop to use it however he wanted. So there really wasn't much doubt about the
history repeats
of
itself.
that laptop. But you had Jim Baker making a strenuous argument. And then, of course, you get to a few days after the October 14th release, you have the president of the United States echoing what these former intelligence community officials were saying, which is that it looked like a Russian influence operation. Yeah. So they were claiming that the laptop was made public by a conspiracy theory. And the conspiracy theory that somehow the Russians got it, and they convinced Yoel Roth that they convinced him of this wild hack and leak story that somehow the Russians stole it, got the information, gave it to the computer store, and it was bizarre. So you read that chain of events, and it appears as though there is an organized influence operation to pre-bunk.
Why? Why do you think they could predict the time, the method, and the person? Why could the FBI predict it? Not only did they predict it, they predicted it. So did the Aspen Institute. Seemed like everyone was in the know, saying, "Here's what's going to happen. We can read the future." How do you think they were able to do that?
I think the most important fact to know is that the FBI had that laptop in December 2019. They were also spying on Rudy Giuliani when he got the laptop and when he gave it to the New York Post. Now, maybe the FBI agents who were going to Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook and to Twitter executives and warning of a hack and leak, potentially involving Hunter Biden, maybe those guys didn't have anything to do with the guys that had the laptop. We don't know that. But I have to say, as a newcomer to this, as somebody that thought it was Russian disinformation in 2020, everybody I knew thought it was Russian. I was shocked to see that series of events going on. It looked to me like a deliberate influence operation. I don't have the proof of it, but the circumstantial evidence is pretty disturbing.
It's pretty overwhelming. Thank you, Mr. Schellenberg. Now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman, for 5 minutes.
Oh, I think it's Mr. Allred first.
Oh, I'm sorry. You just walked in. Recognize the gentleman from Texas. Go right ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter a few tweets into the record.
Sure. Can you identify the tweets?
Let's see it. I think staff should have them. Can we put the tweets up on the screen? Let's take a look at a couple of tweets from Kanye West, who now goes by Ye. At the time of these tweets, had 32 million followers. Mr. Taibbi, can you read the tweet on the text there?
I actually can't. My eyesight is not so great.
I'll read it to you. It says, "I'm a bit sleepy tonight, but when I wake up, I'm going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people," in all caps. The funny thing is, I actually can't be anti-Semitic because black people are actually Jew. Also, you guys have toured with me and tried to blackball anyone who ever opposes your agenda. And can you see the tweet next to it?
I can, yes.
It's would you describe it? It's a Star of David, the swastika in the middle of it.
Yes.
Should those tweets have been taken down by Twitter?
I think it's a difficult question. Hate speech is
Unfortunately,
protected
we
in the
get some
United
of these
States.
situations where
One of my heroes growing up was the
when it's
Ukraine-born
a
author
popular
Isaac
movement and
Babel.
popular
He gave
to
a speech at the first Soviet Writers' Congress, and he was asked if
kind
any
of go
important
against the
rights had been
narrative,
taken away.
then we get
And he
crazy people
sarcastically
like
answered,
Ye
no.
that jump
The
on.
only rights that have been taken
So-
away are the right to be wrong. And the crowd laughed, but he was making an important point, which is that in a free country, you can't have freedom without the freedom to be wrong.
Let's move on to a couple of other tweets, not from somebody with 32 million followers. This one says, Elon now controls Twitter. Unleash the racial slurs, K-word and N-word. The other one says, I can freely express how much I hate N-words now. Thank you, Elon. See, these tweets were taken down, even by Elon Musk's Twitter, and they should have been, because they're hate speech. And they lead to real world reactions. In fact, in the 12 hours after Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter, hate speech of all kinds spiked on Twitter, including a 500% increase in the use of the N-word. And it's not just online. From 2020 to 2021, hate crimes rose almost 44% in major cities. So hate speech online has real impacts in life. And so does election misinformation and propaganda online. Now, Mr. Taibbi, I've read a lot of your work. I respect some of it.
I know, shit. It
We've
got
cast
Joe
a lot of
Biden
doubt
elected.
on Russian
Fuck.
interference in our elections. And today, you have virtually alleged a vast government conspiracy to censor speech. But I can tell you that the
Not
threat
alleged.
to our democracy, I'm not asking you a question. I'll let you know when I do. I can tell you that the threat to our democracy is very real. And it's not just the elections that get all the headlines. In 2018,
Yeah, from you
in a
assholes.
congressional race, two Kremlin-aligned foreign nationals named Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman
Right.
succeeded in funneling illegal Russian money to a Trump-aligned super PAC that spent $1.3 million to support the Republican candidate. That was my election. My neighbors in East Dallas saw advertisements online, in their mailbox, and on their TV paid with Russian money. That's not my opinion. That's a fact,
Oh,
proven
fuck
in the
you.
Southern District of New York. Both Parnas and Fruman were convicted to 21
Exactly.
months and 1 year, respectively, for conspiring to make political contributions by a foreign national, along with other campaign finance-related violations. We live in an information age where malign actors do want to use social media to influence our elections, both big, the ones that you've spent a lot of time talking about, and small, like mine.
Mr. Congressman,
And
may
it
I
should
ask
be
a
a
question?
bipartisan goal. No, you don't get to ask questions here.
Okay.
It should be a bipartisan goal to ensure that Americans and only Americans determine the outcome of our elections, not fear-mongering. And I hope that you can actually take this with you, because I honestly hope that you will grapple with this. That it may be possible that if we can take off the tinfoil hat, that there's not a vast conspiracy, but that ordinary folks and national security agencies responsible for our security are trying their best to find a way to make sure that our online discourse doesn't get people hurt or see our democracy undermined. And that the very rights that you think they're trying to undermine, they may be trying to protect. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from
Nazi
Kentucky, Mr. Massey,
fags.
is recognized for 5 minutes.
I want to talk about the weaponization of the CDC against the American people. And this overlaps with one of the Twitter files, number 13 by my count, actually by Alex Berenson, not one of our two witnesses, but I would like your comment on it. A week before Christmas 2020, the vaccines came out. The FDA curated the Pfizer trial results, and then the CDC curated the FDA's opinion. The CDC said in their MMWR, which is never peer
Oh,
reviewed.
I know.
They're very proud it's not peer reviewed.
That's
They treat it
terrorism.
like science is not science. They said that the vaccine was 92% efficacious
asshole.
for people who had already had COVID. The Pfizer trial data said no such thing. In fact, there was no support for that claim. So I called up the head of the CDC, recorded the conversation, the head in Washington, D.C. She said she'd get the top scientists on the line. There was a snowstorm that day, so I was impressed. She got this top scientist on the line. They said I was Eagle Eye Massey. They couldn't believe how that statement had made it into their report and that I was absolutely correct. There was no support for it. So I said, how are you going to fix it? You're going to redact it? You're going to change it? What are you going to do?
100%.
They said, we'll
And
do
if
all of
nothing's
that.
there,
I said, great. A month later,
then at
it's
least
still
you
on their website.
looked
I made some
and
more phone calls.
verified it
They
yourself.
brought in an old
That's
hand, an
how
old
I
fixer,
always
Dr.
try.
Shushat. These are her notes with of her phone call with me about natural immunity in January when I called him out on it again. These are the entirety of her notes that were obtained in my FOIA from somebody, a third party. I took all of my recordings, released them to Cheryl Atkinson. She blew the whistle on this. A lot of people have forgotten about it. Here's why I find it interesting, and I'm going to tie it into the Twitter files. And by the way, I told them I was not an anti-vax. I said the problem with your story is there's a misallocation of vaccines which are not available for all the old people in Kentucky, but you got young people in Kentucky taking them because you're telling them on the website, even if you've had COVID, go get it. So that was my complaint. On May 10th, 2021, Todd O'Boyle, this name will come up in a Twitter file later. He is the top lobbyist in Twitter's Washington office, who was also Twitter's point of contact in the White House. He encouraged the CDC
You'll take other
to
jabs,
enroll
though.
in the partner support program. Oh, okay. The CDC is now a partner with Twitter because they're in the partner support program. He said, in the future, that's the best way to get a spreadsheet like this reviewed. Now, this is an email from between Todd O'Boyle.
Realistically,
and,
probably
and the
I
folks at
support
CDC.
Ukraine,
By the way, let me
to you by
talk to this
Lockheed
too.
Martin.
These are more of my conversations with the CDC, completely redacted the subject thereof. Next one, please. I also found as a result of the FOIA, CDC tracks every tweet that a congressman puts out. Not just Republican, but Democrat. They keep a spreadsheet. They make it every week. This showed up in the FOIA for me because I'm in their spreadsheet that they track. Why is this interesting? Okay, so they're tracking congressmen's tweets at CDC. They're enrolled in the partner support portal at Twitter. And then I found, this is why I found Alex Berenson's report very interesting because what he found out is that Scott Gottlieb worked hard and Twitter complied, it looks like, to censor a tweet from a doctor about natural immunity. Guess what? On the same day that doctor's tweet was censored, so were my tweets on natural immunity. Why is this important? What is consequential about the date? This is 3 days after the military vaccine mandate came out and a week before the federal vaccine mandates came out. This truth was toxic to a narrative that Pfizer was spreading, that Joe Biden wanted out there so that he could force the vaccine on everybody, whether you had natural immunity or not. Now, you guys might not agree with me on this. I don't think the press gets special privileges on the First Amendment. I don't think Congress does. I think every American, by virtue of being an American, has the right to free speech enshrined in the Constitution. So I'm not so much worried that they censored a congressman, but they disabled all the comments from my constituents. Those are the voices they squelched. And my beef is not with Twitter, but my beef is with the CDC and these federal agencies. And I encourage you all, if you can, to find more about this. And do you have either of you have any comments on this topic?
Yeah, absolutely.
The gentleman's time expired, but the gentleman the
Still had 3 seconds.
The witnesses may respond.
Okay.
Just quickly, we found just yesterday a tweet from the Virality Project at Stanford, which was partnered with a number of government agencies on Twitter, where they talked explicitly about censoring stories of true vaccine side effects and other true stories that they felt encouraged.
It's a good way of
residents.
doing that, though. Get your shit out and just let the witness
Yeah,
talk.
so they use the word true 3 times in this email. And what's notable about this is that it reflects the fundamental misunderstanding of this whole disinformation complex, anti-disinformation complex. They believe that ordinary people can't handle difficult truths. And so they think that they need minders to separate out things that are controversial or difficult for them. And that's, again, that's totally contrary to what America's all
I
about.
got Beyond Beef.
I'll just briefly add,
Beef
this
burgers.
is very disturbing
Beyond
because
Meat?
what they're doing when
Whatever
they're
the
putting
fuck
these
they are.
labels on there is they're
Cricket
actually
burgers.
also trying to discredit you. So it's not just, it's a form of censorship, but it's also a disinformation campaign. And I think what Matt says is really important to understand. I mean, you go from a situation where we were fighting ISIS recruiting,
Thanks, Lenny.
and then it was Russian disinformation. And now they're in a situation where they're
sorry,
wanting
buddy.
to censor true information, accurate facts, because they're worried that people might behave in ways that they don't want them to. That involves mind reading at a level that is grossly inappropriate. I mean, I worry even about making this defense because let's remember the First Amendment
No, I
protects
wouldn't
our
ever
right to
eat
be
that
wrong.
shit.
It protects our right to lie.
Plant
I mean, it's
burgers.
bizarre to me that we would need to make a
Give me a
defense of
cow.
the First Amendment and remind people
Full
that we have
fucking
a
cow.
right to be wrong. And being wrong, as Matt was explaining, is a big part of being a human being and having a democracy. So this is disturbing and chilling, and you're absolutely right to be outraged by it. There needs to be a full truth and reconciliation that I hope everybody would appreciate having on this issue, because a lot of bad behavior has come out about what they've done.
Thank you. Yield back.
Good job. Gentleman's time has expired. We now recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman.
Actually, excuse me, it's Miss Sanchez.
I'm sorry.
And Mr. Chair, since that went over 2 minutes with them responding, will you give an additional
Yeah,
time?
there's a
to
Question
Ms.
at the end of
Sanchez?
someone,
before I give up
there's a
and
question at the end of
make
someone's 5 minutes and the witnesses haven't responded. We'll give them
Leave
time to
now,
do that.
so
Many
far.
times you
Up to
guys
2
go over
minutes?
and then there's no
I
question.
understand that, but 2 minutes. Okay,
That's
thank you.
customary, so we'll certainly do that. Gentlelady from California is recognized. Excuse me.
I'd like to yield my time to Mr. Goldman.
We didn't hear
Thank
you
you,
again. It
Ms.
sounded really
Sanchez.
wooden.
Mr. Schellenberger, first, I'd just like to compliment you on your choice of tie today. Seems like we're on the same page.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I would also just like to respond to your last point and just remind everyone that, of course, we all believe in
Isn't
the
this
First
just
Amendment,
fucking
but the
retard
First Amendment
witness?
applies to government prohibition of speech, not to private companies.
Fuck this
I want to
guy.
talk about your Twitter files number 7, Mr. Schellenberger. Are you aware that Rudy Giuliani was the sole source of the hard drive obtained by the New
I'm
York
gay
Post?
too. Do you like my
That is my
purple
understanding.
tie?
And are you aware that Rudy Giuliani
Fucking
had been
bitch.
openly cavorting with agents of Russian intelligence throughout 2020?
That is also my understanding.
Now,
That's
this
where
was
he
the
came
same
from.
Russian
I knew
agent who had been
I've seen
feeding
this guy
information
before.
to Senators Johnson and Grassley, I might add. But also, are you aware that Rudy Giuliani told the New York Times that he did not want anyone to do an analysis of the hard drive until it was published?
I was not aware of that exactly,
But you don't dispute it?
I don't dispute it.
And are you aware that one of the New York Post
course, it
reporters
wasn't my
for the
favorable
Hunter Biden story refused to put his
shit during the
byline on the
impeachment.
story?
Yes.
And are you aware that Fox News called the story, quote, very sketchy, unquote?
I'm aware that somebody at Fox News said that, yes.
Correct. Brett Baer at Fox News said
Yes.
that. And are you aware that the FBI had nothing to do with Twitter's decision to pause the New York Post story?
I am not aware of that.
Okay, well, let me read you the testimony from Yoel Roth at the hearing we had on February 8th. The quote, the FBI was quite careful and consistent to request review of the accounts, but not to cross the line into advocating for Twitter to take any particular action. And then Jim Baker said in response to the chairman's
my
question,
ass.
when he asked, did you talk to the FBI about the Hunter Biden story? He said, to the best of my recollection, I did not talk to the FBI about the Hunter Biden story before that day. In other testimony, Yoel Roth said that the information that he received from the FBI had nothing to do with the Hunter Biden story. Now, are you aware that there was an analysis of the hard drive that was done by the Washington Post at a later date?
My awareness is that multiple media organizations have done analyses and found including CBS, and found that it was indeed, the laptop was authentic and that nothing had been changed on it.
So let's just get something clear. The laptop that the FBI had is different than the hard drive that Rudy Giuliani gave to the New York Post. A hard drive, you agree with this, is a copy from a laptop, right?
Yes.
And you are aware that hard drives can be altered, are you not?
Of course.
Okay.
Good night,
So are
Impish.
you aware that the Washington Post analysis of the hard drive showed that it had been altered?
I have heard that, but I'm also saying CBS verified,
Politico,
and other media organizations have verified. I mean,
but we're not talking
people
about
aren't really
we're not
making this
talking
argument
about
anymore.
authenticity. We're not talking about
Okay.
authenticity. We're talking about whether it's been altered.
Yeah.
Okay. There's no question there's some material on the hard drive that is authentic and accurate. But are you aware that there's some material that is not?
Hasn't been
My understanding is that there are
altered.
copies of the hard drive that have been tampered with, and that media organizations, including CBS, have verified that the laptop in question was not tampered with.
I don't know what the laptop in question, but let's move on, because you said in your Twitter files, am I correct, that every single fact in the New York Post story was accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recall that the first paragraph of that Post story said that then Vice President Joe Biden pressured Ukraine to fire its prosecutor general because he was investigating Burisma, where Hunter Biden was
Pretty
on
sure
the board?
the FBI still has it.
I have here, which I'd like to enter into the record, the Trump-Ukraine impeachment inquiry report.
Yeah,
300
I mean, you're
pages
leaving
by the House
digital
Intelligence
signature.
Committee.
So
Did you review this report before you said that every fact in this story was accurate?
Without objection, the material be entered in the record.
Did I read that before I wrote the Twitter files? No.
Okay.
I'm aware
Because
of its
if you
content.
read this, you would have known that every single State Department and Trump administration
is he trying to
expert
sell his
on
own
Ukraine
fucking book right now?
said that Vice President Joe Biden, in concert with the European Union and the IMF, was executing official U.S. policy by encouraging Ukraine to fire the prosecutor general
What's up,
because he
Kaiser?
was not prosecuting corruption and was not prosecuting companies like Burisma. So that story,
I
notwithstanding
didn't pay
your
that much attention.
allegations, was
Did the FBI get the laptop after that guy in Congress said that he had it in his possession?
The chair now recognizes the gentleman from
The FBI had the
Florida,
laptop.
Mr. Gates, for 5 minutes.
Impeachment nostalgia always warms my heart, but we are here focused on a weaponized government, a whole
That
of government
was his fucking
approach
book.
that has been
He's
turned
trying to sell
against
his
the
fucking
American
book in
people. And while Rudy
Congress.
Giuliani may have been running around with the laptop in 2020, what is an indisputable fact is that the FBI had the laptop in 2019. And it appears that the last round of questioning misses the boat, that it's true. The information is authentic. The pictures, the videos, the emails, there hasn't been a single allegation that there is a single doctored email. Unlike what we saw before the FISA courts, where the FBI itself was doctoring emails to try to smear President Trump. But I have to get to a question I'm amazed.
Fuck you all. I'm out. I'm on my phone and I can't deal with anything in relation to my microphone. So I'll talk to you
Where
later.
is
Bye.
government action
Take care,
subject to
Ozzy.
rigorous
Thanks for
scrutiny
stopping by,
under
buddy.
First Amendment standards? Government action demanding that your names be listed. How did it feel when you found out that you were being expressly targeted by a government document based on your reporting?
It's chilling. I mean, it's disturbing. I never thought that would happen in the United States of America, to be perfectly honest. I've lived in a bunch of authoritarian countries. I've visited a lot of authoritarian countries. Never thought this kind of thing would be going on here.
Oh, come on, bastard.
And the nexus to authoritarianism is the desire to control the nature of truth itself. Our understandings change about things. We learn new things. We challenge prior assumptions. But if a bunch of people in Washington, D.C. get to decide what the truth is and then enforce it on the country and then punish and target those who report on their conduct, we are drifting more toward that. How did you feel, Mr. Taibbi, when you saw your name?
I was upset, obviously. I lived in Russia during the 90s and early 2000s. I was there when Putin took power. I was friends with a group of very brave, muckraking reporters in Russia, many of whom didn't make it. A few of them were murdered after Putin came to power. So I've always been conscious of how the risks that other reporters take in other countries are incredibly severe. And that's one of the reasons why I'm motivated to protect the First Amendment, because our country has the best protections for reporters in the world. But this kind of thing, where the government is looking for information about reporters, it's usually a canary in the coal mine that something worse is coming in terms of an effort to exercise control over the press. And so on that level, it's absolutely disturbing. Also, the Aspen Institute report that we published today, talked about today in the Twitter files thread, one of their recommendations was that the FTC be empowered to have unlimited power to search all data of private companies, so that they could more freely and more accurately search the speech of ordinary citizens.
So as we're trying to put downward pressure on the government's expanding authority to be able to engage in what we see mostly from dictatorships, what you're reporting and what you're observing is that actually they view this as a growth industry, the information business, right? This
Yes.
censorship industrial complex is a growth industry to the government.
I think the key thing also, yes, and the thing to understand is that NSF.
What is NewsGuard and how are they part of the censorship industrial complex?
Yeah, and by the way, we talked about Richard Stengel. He's on the board of NewsGuard. NewsGuard and the Disinformation Index are both U.S. government-funded entities who are working to drive advertiser revenue away from disfavored publications and towards the ones that they favor. This is
Now,
totally
what I'm
inappropriate.
used to in this town is government officials pick their favorite outlets and they give them the best scoops and they give them the best stories. And there's a fusion of media and government that has long made me uncomfortable. But what you're describing now is literally the directing of revenue to certain media companies over other media companies designed and implemented with U.S. government funding and support.
That's right.
That is an astonishing. If we do not take a look at NewsGuard, we have failed. And you talk about the brave reporting that occurs and what it subjects you to. I would suggest there's also political bravery that I have observed. While we've only heard from Democrats on this panel attacking you, discrediting you, a lot like they've tried to attack and discredit FBI whistleblowers who are truth tellers, there are brave Democrats who still believe in free speech. And I would advise my colleagues to look at the comments of Ro Khanna, who has been deeply, deeply concerned about this weaponization of government. And he believes these Twitter files are indeed worthy of our focus and our energy. And that is exactly what we are going to do. I yield back.
I think the gentleman would now recognize the gentlelady from New York.
I still have my 5 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
I understand why you may not.
Because you were yielded 5. The gentleman from New York is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank
Excuse
you.
me.
Mr. Schellenberger, I may have misheard earlier, but is it your testimony here today that you disagree with the 2 indictments by Special Counsel Robert Mueller that definitively established that Russia interfered in our 2016 election through social media disinformation and a hack and leak operation?
No, I don't disagree.
Okay, Mr. Taibbi, do you disagree with those 2 indictments?
Well, indictments aren't a thing to
Do you disagree?
with.
They're about 40 or 50 pages. Do you disagree with the evidence outlined in those indictments?
Well, indictments are just charges.
I just asked you, do you disagree with the evidence included in those indictments? Yes or no?
I'm not on the jury of that case. I couldn't possibly say yes or no.
Okay, because you said earlier, I believe, that you did not see Russia, you could not confirm that Russia interfered in our election in 2016, that you don't believe that. Is that your testimony here today? You don't believe that they did?
I think it's possible that they may have on a small scale, but certainly not to what's been reported.
What's been reported or what's been included in the indictments?
Well, again, indictments are allegations. They're not proof. And
I understand. It's a pretty detailed allegation.
In the Mueller indictment, by the way.
You should go read the indictment and then come back and tell us if you actually think there's no proof of it.
Well,
but let me move on. Let me move on, please.
By the way, when
please let me move on. That's how this works. You should know that by now. So do you disagree with the Special Counsel Mueller's conclusion in his report, Mr. Taibbi, that the Trump campaign knew about Russia's interference, they welcomed it, and they used it for their benefit? You have no reason to disagree with that, don't you? You have no information. So after that foreign interference in our 2016 election, Twitter and other social media companies naturally wanted to work with the intelligence community to stop Vladimir Putin from interfering in our elections again. Mr. Taibbi, do you think it's a legitimate pursuit of the FBI to try to stop foreign interference in our elections?
Again, sir, will I be allowed to answer this question or?
It's a yes or no question. Do you think it's a legitimate pursuit of the FBI?
It's not a yes or no answer.
No. I'm not asking how. I'm saying as an objective, do you think it's a legitimate objective of the FBI to stop foreign interference in our elections?
I think it's a legitimate objective to stop actual foreign interference.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what the difference is, but that's fine.
Well,
Since Russia used social media disinformation, according to Special Counsel Mueller, I understand you may disagree with the allegations, to interfere in our 2016 elections. Are you trying to say that the FBI had no basis to inform social media companies about efforts to potentially interfere in our elections after 2016?
I can tell you that I read internal Twitter emails where Twitter expressly talked about the fact that the FBI couldn't possibly know more than they did about whether or not there was Russian interference, and that in fact, even they couldn't determine which accounts were actually IRA and which ones weren't.
Okay, I understand you like to filibuster. That was not an answer to my question, but I'll move on. Mr. Schellenberger, in all of the emails that you reviewed, did the FBI ever direct Twitter to take down any accounts or remove any posts?
Yes.
They directed Twitter to remove them, or they said these may violate your terms and services?
Yes. I think that's an accurate use of the word direct.
They said these may violate. You think that saying that
Yes,
these
I
may
do.
violate your terms and conditions is the same as directing them to take an account down?
Yeah, I mean, I think if a police officer says,
all right, well,
you broke
that's
the
very
law.
helpful. That's very helpful. I'm glad to know that you think flagging something for a private company to make a decision about what they should do is a direction. Now, Mr. Chairman, you have repeatedly said that this
This is
committee
my
is all
least
about
favorite
protecting the First
congressman.
Amendment. And what's unfortunate here is that we are talking about Twitter, and that we are not talking about Republican government officials around the country who are banning books. And we are not talking about—
Would the gentleman yield?
No, I will not. And we are not talking about Donald Trump jailing his former counsel to prohibit him
Of course,
from
Donald Trump.
publishing a book that the president did not want. The former president literally jailed his enemy. And we're here talking about Twitter. And even with Twitter, you cannot find actual evidence of any direct government censorship of any lawful speech. And when I say lawful, I mean non-criminal speech, because plenty of speech is non-criminal.
I'll give you one. The gentleman's time to expire. I'd ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the following email from Clark Humphrey, Executive Office of the Presidency, White House Office, January 23rd, 2021. That's the Biden administration, 4:39 a.m. Hey, folks. This goes to Twitter. Hey, folks, wanted to use the term they used the term Mr. Goldman just used. Wanted to flag the below tweet, and I'm wondering if we can get moving on the process for having
This
it
Goldman gentleman is the
removed
Trump impeachment
ASAP.
lawyer for
That is-
Adam
Did
Schiff.
you read the below tweet?
And then if we can keep an eye out for tweets that fall in this same genre, that would be great. This is a tweet on the very issue that Thomas,
Can you
Mr.
just,
Massey brought.
for the fullness of the record, can you read the, because I've not seen this, can you read the tweet that it's referencing?
I don't have the tweet here with me, but the gentleman's point was, tell us, you said no time did government try to tell Twitter to take that, to explicitly remove something, and
No, I said
it says-
explicitly remove lawful speech. Lawful speech. We're going to conflate. The First Amendment is not absolute.
Twitter, this is something from Robert Kennedy Jr.
But for the record,
I assume that's
as a
lawful
point
speech.
of order, Mr. Chair.
Because
if
Robert
you-
Kennedy
just
Jr.
a
said
minute,
it? That's
just
why
a
it's
minute.
lawful speech?
Just a minute,
look at the
Mr.
tweet for it.
Goldman.
But all I'm saying is you
Chair?
said, no time did the government explicitly say to take a tweet down. Here we have it, right here
Mr.
from the White
Chair?
House. They couldn't even wait 2 days 2 days into this administration, they were asked Twitter to take
Mr.
something
Chair.
down, and we will get you the underlying tweet.
Thank
With that,
you.
I recognize the gentlelady from New York.
Will you place it into the record as well, sir? The underlying tweet?
Robert Kennedy Jr. Is talking about he's talking about Hank Aaron's death after he received the vaccine. That's what the tweet's about. We'll get you a copy.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
I would say one thing. That's certainly lawful.
Mr. Chairman,
speech.
I ask unanimous consent to enter the tweet that you referenced into the record of the committee.
Without objection, we'll enter that into the record along with the statement from the White House, the Biden White House, 2 days into the administration when they're directly attacking people's First Amendment liberties. With that, I recognize the gentlelady from New York for 5 minutes.
I want to yield to Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Just to point out quickly that Mr. Goldman is proving himself to be a master of obfuscation. He said the First Amendment applies to government censorship of speech and not private companies. But what we're talking about and what the chairman just illustrated is that what we have here and what your Twitter files show is the federal government has partnered with private companies to censor and silence the speech of American citizens. I yield back to the gentlelady.
I just came from an open hearing with FBI Director Chris Wray, and he said under oath that no one from the FBI communicated with Twitter regarding the Hunter Biden laptop story. Based upon both of your courageous reporting, can you address that?
I mean, we saw, I mean, like I said, we don't know. I mean, so at this point, we just have to take his word on it. But what we saw was a huge amount of FBI communications to Twitter. We saw the former deputy chief of staff, the former general counsel showing up at Twitter right at the critical period. So I find a lot of suspicious activity. I would like to ask him a bunch of questions about that because I find it very suspicious and unresolved.
Mr. Taibbi, do you have comments on that?
We do know that there was a teleporter communication that had 10 documents in it just before the story broke, but we don't know what those documents were, so we can't suppose.
Well, I don't take his word for it. We have lots of examples where it has not been, they have not been accurate from that particular
Good night,
agency
AP.
when it comes to testifying before Congress. So it is our job in this committee to get to the truth, to shine sunlight and transparency for the American people. I want to ask you both about the Aspen Digital Hack and Dump Working Group, which involved an 11-day scenario in October 2020 that began with the imaginary release of falsified records, that's what they claim, related to Hunter Biden's controversial employment by the Ukrainian energy company Burisma. This was if they knew, because they did know. So I would like your comments, Mr. Schellenberg. These were the files that you did extensive reporting on about how concerning this is and how this is truly the definition of the weaponization against free speech and suppressing accurate reporting.
Yeah, so there's actually two things, and one of them we just discovered recently, which is that there was a Stanford Cyber Policy Institute report, which said that, which was in menacing terms, telling journalists that they should abandon the Pentagon principle. Again, this is the Pentagon Papers principle. This is the idea that if Daniel Ellsberg brings
Well,
you
free speech
materials
can-
taken from the Pentagon about how the war
then
in Vietnam
people
is
can
going,
criticize them,
New York
and
Times
they
and
don't want
Washington
that.
Post published those. That was considered one of the greatest moments of American journalism. Here you have Stanford Cyber Policy Center saying we should abandon that principle. You should instead make the issue about, frankly, the theories about where it might have come from. Then you had the Aspen workshop, which was attended, by the way, by New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, Wikipedia, Facebook, Twitter, many other journalists, where they basically, you read it, it's like a kind of programming of the journalists that they should not follow this longstanding journalistic principle of taking materials from a hack and leak or any other situation and take them seriously. So, I mean, you read this and it feels like a kind of brainwashing exercise that Aspen Institute and Stanford were running.
You have
against
to
American
control the
journalists
First Amendment before
through
you
social
can
media
start
companies.
picking away at the second.
Yes, I
and
think, there were a couple
all
of
the way
moments in the
through.
Twitter files that really speak to a kind of larger problem. In the first Twitter files, we saw an exchange between Representative Rohana and Vijaya God, where he's trying to explain the basics of speech law in America, and she seems completely unaware of what, for instance, New York Times v. Sullivan is. There are other cases like Bartnicki v. Vopper, which legalize the publication of stolen material. That's very important for any journalist to know. I think most of these people are tech executives and they don't know what the law is around speech and around reporting. And in this case, and in 2016, you were dealing with true material. There is no basis to restrict the publication of true material, no matter who the source is and how you get it. And journalists have always understood that. And this has never been an issue or a controversial issue until very recently.
And by the way, just one quick thing I'll add. That's the exact same strategy of the malinformation, misleading. In other words, they were saying even if the material you think is true, it could lead people to have conclusions that we don't want them to have, and therefore you should change your journalism because of that. So this is we're so far down the slippery slope. You know, you've crashed at that point. I mean, it's a disturbing trend in journalism, in social media, and in the relationship from the intelligence community to these organizations.
How have you been targeted since the publication of the Twitter files?
Gentlelady's time expired. We'll give a quick answer if we can.
I mean, again, I've known journalists who suffered real brutal harms in my career. So they've said a lot of nasty things about me on Twitter, but it hasn't been so bad, I would say. The FTC thing is the only thing that's legitimately concerning, and that's not really for my sake. It's more because it's a general problem for journalists everywhere.
I've been censored on Facebook since the year 2020 for writing accurate information in an article that went viral.
That's
remain censored.
interesting,
They continue
and
to flag
we'll talk
warnings
about
on
it
posts
after.
that I write
There's
that have
only,
nothing
I
to
think,
do
10,
with the
15 minutes
environment.
left.
And we now know that one of the U.S. government-funded organizations has put out a report that specifically targets me and presents disinformation about my own position on climate change. And so I've got a lot at stake here.
Yield back.
Mr. Chair, may I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter dated June 25th, 2020 to Mark Zuckerberg from Chad Wolf, the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, in which he asked Facebook to keep Americans safe by taking appropriate action consistent with your terms of service against content that promotes, incites, or assists the commission of eminent illegal activities. Those committed to protecting free exchange of ideas should not turn a blind eye to illegal activity and violence fermenting in your platform. This is after the summer in which Black Lives Matter protests took place.
Without objection, gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for appearing here today. I know it doesn't feel exactly warm and fuzzy, but believe me, I think what you guys are doing is very important. We're here to discuss the weaponization of government, and I want to follow up on my colleague, Representative Massey's comments on the CDC. Up on the screen, you can see an email from October of 2020. That's a huge bitch! From then NIH Director Francis Collins to Dr. Anthony Fauci. It goes on in to say this proposal, talking about the Great Barrington Declaration, is from 3 fringe epidemiologists who met with the secretary, and it seems to be getting a lot of attention, even a signature, a co-signature from a Nobel Prize winner. Key line in here that I would like to point out, there needs to be a, quote, quick and devastating published takedown of its premises. I don't see anything like that online yet. Is it underway? Signed, Francis. Now, what I find interesting is if you fast forward into June of 2021, the Biden administration was raging at social media companies. There is communications that we can produce for the record that state we would like you to combat, quote unquote, misinformation. Now, we, thanks to the Twitter files, know that Twitter executives were using the term visibility filtering, and that really to the rest of the American general public was shadow banning, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So all of a sudden, we saw a rash of blacklists created by Twitter at the highest levels that were taking down some of the signatories and creators of this very Barrington Declaration, correct? This is to both of you.
I haven't seen that, but
I haven't seen that either.
So would you agree that there was a blacklist created in 2021?
Sorry, yes, Jay Bhattacharya, the Stanford professor who I don't think anybody considers a fringe epidemiologist, was indeed, I'm sorry, I didn't piece it together. He was indeed visibility filtered.
Correct. And so this blacklist that was created that really was used to deplatform, reduce visibility, create lists internally where people couldn't even see their profiles. That was used against doctors and scientists who produced information that was contrary to what the CDC was putting out, despite the fact that we now know that what they were publishing had scientific basis and in fact was valid.
Absolutely. And not only that, but these are secret blacklists. So Professor Bhattacharya had no idea he was on it. I mean, this is East Germany Stasi kind of behavior. That's what this is. And the Great Barrington Declaration, by the way, I was skeptical of it at the time, but it actually now looks pretty good in terms of how response to COVID. But even if it was totally wrong, it still deserved, I mean, this is the whole point of the First Amendment, is that I think we all have the experience of you're not right until you're wrong a lot. You know, you
John
actually
Campbell
have to have that
also
debate and that
switched.
conversation. So by repressing that, we actually stifled, I think, a much broader conversation we could have had about how to effectively respond to COVID because they were secretly blacklisting people like Jay Bhattacharya.
And I think to the bigger point that Americans are concerned about when it comes to the weaponization of government, this isn't Republican or Democrat issue, this is an American issue. You had individuals, millions of Americans who in many cases were being mandated to take an experimental vaccine. And when those that wanted to consider taking it were trying to make an informed decision, you had opinions that were being silenced because it didn't fit a specific narrative pushed by the Biden administration, correct?
Absolutely correct. And that's why we use the language of disfavored ideas and disfavored people, because it doesn't fall neatly among left and right lines. If there's anything going on here, it tends to be more of a disproportionate blacklisting of more populist voices, or just ideas that we would consider slightly outside of the Overton window, the mainstream opinion at the time. But the Overton window moves. And so the idea that you're just going to narrow the entire what's acceptable
to
on
just keep
social
working on
media
it. You're
to
too much
what
of a
is
sweetheart,
mainstream
Stevie.
at the time would basically freeze us and not allow the society to progress and for knowledge to grow and for the democracy to function.
With the 14 seconds that I have left, Mr. Taibbi, if you'd like to weigh in on any of this that we have talked about and why this is a direct threat to Americans today, I would appreciate it.
Just quickly, again, we yesterday discovered this email talking about the suppression of people telling their own stories of true vaccine side effects. So these are people who are telling about their own experiences, things that that happened to them that are true, and they're being suppressed because what anti-disinformation does is the opposite of what the press does. They are aiming for what the narrative is, and they already know in advance what they're looking for. Whereas a journalist goes into a story, does not know what the truth is. We often find that the thing we expect to find turns out to be completely different. They know in advance what they're looking for, and that's why this is so dangerous.
My time has expired. I yield back. Thank you, too.
The gentlelady yields back. I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. And I think maybe if we can get this right and stop this, and what legislation, appropriation, whatever it takes, we can stop this. I think in the future, people will look back and look at your courage as people in journalism, in the press, to come here with what you've been facing, what you've had to endure, and now with the idea that the FTC is coming after you. That's something that I think is pretty darn important and certainly noteworthy. So we appreciate you sitting here for 2.5 hours, taking the questions you did, but giving so much valuable information to this committee, who is certainly on our side, committed to protecting the First Amendment and people's right to speak. So that concludes today's hearing. Again, we thank you both for being here. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witnesses or additional materials for the record. Without objection, the hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, sir.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was the Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government. It has been adjourned. That happened over on Friday. just a mess. Just a mess. Yeah. So I wanted to. This is a question that's why I was trying to block Twitter then. If Elon does what they want. I don't think Elon does what they want. And I certainly could be way off base. Could be way off base. There are some things that certainly have me concerned with the methods and things that Elon's done. I also think that there is certainly a chance that the media is manipulating it for their own purpose. He's not a staunch conservative. He's never said that. And I don't think we need people on our team to stand up for things like free speech or the First Amendment or hell, the Second Amendment or anyone past that. I think it's imperative that we stop the division, stop the divide, and start putting together kind of coalition of people that we may not agree with on every little fucking thing, but still can be beneficial. And sometimes those people are the most beneficial because we don't agree with them on other things. I think that the whole system is fucked, and we have some work to do. And I think any ally that we can get in the fight is theoretical fight YouTube, not actual. I think anyone that we can get to help is definitely on our team, even if they're not fully engaged with our thought process and feelings and stuff. And it's not a little thing. Elon is a rare earth slave. So that's like the lithium and the different thing for his Tesla cars. I think that it's important to not bite the hand that feeds you. I mean, he has a good portion of his money in Tesla. That's kind of, I mean, SpaceX has been more of his toy, but Tesla's been his bread and butter. That's the company that's allowed him to venture and make all these different things. Yeah, kind of like that. The answer is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Answer the lies, Twitter. I guess I'm misunderstanding you strong. Answer the lies, Twitter from China and rare earth mines. Answer the lies, Twitter. I'm not getting you strong, and I'm trying not to. And I guess well, actually, if we're gonna get into the battery debate, nuclear quartz are probably the most promising, and will if we can develop the technology, it would be incredibly life-changing for all of us. And Iran is, I mean, maybe that's why Israel's making a move on Iran. Who knows? Exactly. I don't agree with Elon on everything, Elon is a human. Damn, X-Comer, you work fast, buddy. I'm going to specifically cover news probably tomorrow, maybe even during the day. I don't know, because I got some news to catch up on. Okay. Yeah, I'll look into it. I just I didn't understand what you're getting at, buddy. I'm not trying to discount it or be difficult. I don't really understand what you're getting at. So well, they're not random radiation sources. I'll cover nuclear quartz at some point because well, Elon has to have factories in China to be able to sell to that market. So well, and a lot of the rare earths aren't available here in the States. So yeah, no worries. I thought it was important. I think weaponizing our government is a serious topic. So I think it's something that needs to be taken care of and talked about, because if we're going to be honest with ourselves and people would be honest without their political divide, then there are certain things that we have to accept as truth, and the weaponization of our government is one of those things. So yeah, and most of them are not the rare earth, and I covered like 2 weeks ago, and it was a shit video. Don't go watch it. It was the last second, and I want to do it better. But I covered lanthanides, which are rare earth elements, and yeah, some of them aren't so rare, and the ones that are truly rare, we don't use because they're too expensive for industrial production, anyways. So yeah, no, I didn't see that. Saudi and Iran. That's interesting. Yeah. There's some of them that I feel like are important. So, first time I've done, the full length hearing, but I kind of enjoyed it, and I would be, not an everyday thing, but if you guys wanted one from now on, now and again, then I'd be happy to do it. So, as you know, let me know, make a suggestion, and if we can swing it, I'll do it. So, what's up, Jacob? Critical minerals, steel, iron, carbon. Yeah. And again, it depends on your, but shit, even that we're not making here anymore. So, yeah, I'll have to look at that as well, because I haven't got a chance to look at it. Now, to break up the monotony, I'm going to... Oh, where he admits that to get the prosecutor fired and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I think that it's important to do it in a community, in a small community where we can interact and give our opinions and thoughts. And if I can answer the question, I'd be happy as hell to try. So I think there's some value to watching it in a small group setting like this where we can discuss it. So yeah, and look what happened after invasion. No one thought any less of you, Richard, for real. What's up, Yeppers? Yeppers, ma'am? Everything wrong with the... Yeah, I believe on Yeppers over on Rumble, I believe on Monday we're going to go through a deep dive Rumble exclusive on J6. And really talk about some of the stuff that hasn't been talked about. So I'm not the only one saying certain things in the chat. Yeah, and I think there's some value to it. So we try to make you laugh, because if not, you that's right there. You, if you can laugh about it, then you're not going to lose your mind about it. So nope, he's being a dick. He's he can't leave super thanks. I can't have any monetization on YouTube. I don't know if you can leave Rumble rants, but everybody knows how to get to me. Shoot me an email if you have, anything, or hit me up on Discord. Yes. Oh, okay. Well, I love you too, buddy. I thought you were trying to be a jerk because you've done that a couple times when you say leave him a super chat and you know better. Wow. No, but I'll look up that and steal it from Oz. No, Ozzy and I have this love relationship. We just, we like to go at each other, but we're good friends, and he's a great person. So, and we're much kinder to each other off the screen. By that, I mean, we give each other even more shit. What the fuck? I'm getting screwed in this deal. All right, so sorry, I have to break this up. So we're going to play the news stinger, and then I have a very important news story from Fox News. Breaking news. Dad discovers his daughter's a stripper. Refuses to make her car payments any longer. It's my money. I have no fucking idea. Sure, yeah. That'd be great. No fucking idea why this is a Fox News headline. I know, I just haven't got a second to cut it down. I will cut it down even more. It's just, I gotta have a second. I'll cut it down. So, family standoff elicits over 6,000 comments, said one person. Stop shaming your daughter. A father is making waves on Reddit for oh fuck, it's on Reddit. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I know where I'm gonna cut it. A father is making waves on Reddit saying he's no longer making car payments for his daughter now that he's learned she's been working as a stripper. The post on Reddit has earned more than 20,000 reactions and over 6,000 comments. A man by the username of Living Wit Horse shared on the subreddit known as Ada. Am I the asshole? Sorry, Jess, stealing your thunder. His story of family drama, and ask others for their input on the case. He said he's a 47-year-old male who has a 22-year-old daughter. He said she's in college and lives there on campus. Reddit is total shit. I agreed to help her make car payments since she was in school, he wrote. But the father said he recently learned from a young man he works with that his daughter, now strips at a club about 40 minutes away. The man who did not share his location wrote, I confronted her on this, and she said she didn't plan to do it, and that she needed the money. I asked her to quit stripping and get a decent job. The man said he told his daughter he'd rather she worked at McDonald's, not make money from the use of her body. He went on, we got into an argument, and then I asked her to quit stripping and get a decent job then. But she refused, the father wrote, and said stripping was easy money. It is. Trust me. So basically the man added, I said there's no need for me to pay her car payment any longer, since she is making money so easily. Meh. He went on, she got upset and said it wasn't fair and that she doesn't make enough for that. I told her to figure it out. She got upset and said that wasn't fair. The man said she told my wife about what happened, and my wife is upset by her job of choice, but says it's unfair for me to stop supporting her so suddenly over an argument. The father and husband also said, I think it's perfectly fair. It's my money and my decision when to cut it off. Fox News Digital reached out to the New York psychologist for insight into the family drama. That's a weird picture. A father of four on the East Coast told Fox Digital he has plenty of questions about the story. Does the young woman truly need the money? When did she suddenly turn to stripping? He said there must be more to the story. He also said if the father was paying if all the father was paying for was his daughter's car payments, and now he stopped that because of her choice of work, then that's not right either. Plenty of people shared their own views and comments in the meantime, and I love how this is a stripper, but not the daughter. One person was particularly angry about the informant, not any of the family members in the scenario. What kind of asshole tells a woman's parents that they saw their daughter stripping, as if it's any of his business to get into? said one commenter. About the informer, the person continued, your gross coworker who goes to strip clubs to oogle women but then tattletales on them is the biggest asshole in this issue. I'm fucking done reading this story. This is so stupid. This is like an Aussie story that just keeps going. I have no idea why this showed up on my Fox News feed and was some big fucking news deal. But I thought I'd share it with you to break up the monotony of the hearing. Let's look at what the comments said. I have no idea. That's true. I agree. Like, you're 22, do it yourself. Strippers do make good money if you're if you're an attractive stripper, you can make money. If you're not an attractive stripper, then you have to do extras, and then you still make money. Yeah, if she's stripping, she can pay her fucking car payment. I don't know that that's true about all of them. I think that's probably the norm, but I think it's unfair to categorize all as. Could be both. Yes. Yeah, I mean, oh no. People, I think you're newer here, but if you ask me to expound on it, I'm going to, and it's going to scare the shit out of people. So we're just going to leave it there. That's sometimes just the best. Couple $100, but then the club's going to take a lot of that. It's like $300 to $500. Yeah, if she's ugly, 50, unless she does mouth stuff. Cutter funding, no more free rides done. If you're not going to respect yourself, neither will I. That's an interesting take. That's what I was hoping, is that there was pictures of the daughter, because then we would have a better picture. I think if she's 22, she should be paying her own damn bills. Now, I have an interesting take on that, because my parents never paid for shit, and I was out of the house very young. So, make it work. Well, I think there's extremes, and this is a deep conversation that we're probably not going to have right now. But there's extremes where if you're too strict, it's deliberating, where they want to do it just to say fuck you. And then if you go the other way, where it's all peace and love and orgies every night, then I think that's too far the other way. So I think, like anything in life, there needs to be a balance. I mean, dads go to strip clubs all the time. I said 3 to 5 if you're decent and working the whole night. No, there's no way in hell. No. I'm looking it up. The truth about stripping on average is about $400 a night. Is an acceptable number for most exotic dancers. Not good, not bad, acceptable. So about $400 a night. Well, I think half their earnings and that's terrible, Glitter. I think most of it, so a lot of it goes to the club, so they don't get as much. And yeah, there are significant amounts that aren't reported for sure. But see, I know these things. I said between $300 and $500, and the average is 4. So that's true. That's why I looked for an average, not Friday night. True. I agree. I agree with that part of it. Well, I mean, in truth, I mean, if you're looking for sex and it's cheaper and you're more likely to get it by just paying for it than taking the chance with someone, you know, that who the hell knows, and dinner and flowers and all that shit and blah blah blah. I mean, well, we say one thing and do it different. Glitter, I'll see you later. I'm still coming to our orgy tonight. Don't worry. Shut up. I know, because I'm actually interested in the topic. So yeah, and that's, yeah, $400 is nothing. You make more on OnlyFans, you're not getting touched. You don't have to worry about it. Shit. And I'm caught up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for me. I have taken it past midnight. I don't think I'd care if they were doing OnlyFans. See, now, there's a current events. Throw it in there. I don't think I'd care if they were doing OnlyFans. I would prefer that they stripped than did OnlyFans. OnlyFans, the videos are there forever. The pictures are there forever. And there's more protections in the strip club for protecting the dancers and the talent than there is on the internet. So, all right, buddy, have a good night. I'm going to throw this up real quick since so that's just a couple of the things that we have coming up. But thanks everybody for stopping by. Hit that like button. If you're on the replay crew or here for the first time, hey, what's up, Cornpro? please hit that subscribe button. We are on our way to 500 and the meat roast. And everybody have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, bye.